in our bank account. Everything just felt a lot lighter. I would say if you're thinking about entering, just enter.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Will, please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This January, history will be made again.
Join GB News as we bring you full coverage of Donald Trump's presidential inauguration.
From the swearing-in ceremony to the celebrations, we'll be there to capture every moment that shapes the next chapter of world politics.
The best guests, live updates and unparalleled insight as Donald Trump becomes the 47th President of the United States. The inauguration Monday from 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's 12 o'clock on Saturday, the 18th of January. No idea either. This is the weekend on GB News. Now, Sir Keir Starmer has promised to deliver justice to the victims of grooming gangs, with 5 new local inquiries launched earlier this week. But has the government done too little too late to really crack down on those criminals? And the other group who aren't that happy, farmers took to the streets once again to protest the government's changes to inheritance tax. But is their ongoing struggle beginning to fall on deaf ears? And we are just 2 days away, incredible I know, from Donald Trump's inauguration as he prepares to return to the White House. Could this be the change the US is after, or is there more trouble on that horizon? I'm Dawn Neeson, and this is The Weekend, and it starts right here and now. So thank you for joining me on this January Saturday afternoon. I hope you're having a cosy, warm time out there. It's still not too good, is it? And it's National Quitting Day. So whatever you promised yourself you're going to do on the 1st of January, today is the day you're more likely to quit it. Try January. How's that going, folks? Yeah, me neither. OK, but because this show is nothing without you and your views. So let me know your thoughts on all the stories we're discussing today. It's really simple to get involved, and that involves everything from what Trump's doing in America, what Labour are doing here, actually not here, I'm touring Europe, and whether you're actually cracking on those resolutions. Very simple to get involved. Simply go to gbnews.com/yoursay and join our conversation. We have an absolutely packed show. It's going to be non-stop, great panels, great debate. But before we get to those, here's the news headlines with Will Hollis.
Thanks, Dawn. At 2 minutes past 12, your top story. Israeli ministers have given full approval for the ceasefire and hostage release deal, pausing the war in Gaza. After a 6-hour meeting, the decision was made to support the deal at the very last moments. In a phased release, the first 3 hostages will be freed on Sunday at 6:30, followed by 30 more over a 6-week period. Women and children, plus older men, will be the first to be released. British hostage Emily Damari is reported to be amongst the first 33 hostages leaving captivity. That's according to the Jewish Chronicle. In return, Palestinian detainees will be released and there will be a sharp increase in humanitarian aid to the enclave. Well, back here in the UK, thousands of people will march through London today, calling on the government to stop arming Israel. The pro-Palestine march was planned to assemble outside the BBC building, accusing the corporation of bias. However, because of its proximity to a local synagogue, the Met Police has restricted the group to Whitehall. 1,000 officers are on duty in the capital, monitoring the march, and a 61-year-old woman has already been arrested on suspicion of inciting others to breach public order conditions. Sir Keir Starmer says the UK-Poland treaty would cover all aspects of the threats that the UK faces and how to meet them. Polish counterpart Donald Tusk also said he hoped for a return rather than a Brexit, as he said he had discussed the European Union with Sir Keir Starmer. The pair told reporters they discussed how the countries can combat people smuggling gangs and Russian aggression while bolstering European security. Sir Keir says Poland and the UK have shared values and shared interests during his visit to Warsaw, adding, "This will include deepening ties between the two nations' defence industries."
We spent much of our time today focusing on defence and security. As two of Europe's biggest military powers, with our troops serving together, guarding the eastern flank, we share an unbreakable commitment to NATO.
Donald Trump is to review the Chagos deal when he returns to the White House on Monday. The president-elect's team directly intervened in the British government's deal, demanding the delay. That's according to the Telegraph newspaper. Fears over Chinese influence if the strategically important islands are returned to Mauritius are fueling the delay. The US has a permanent military base on the East African island. Ahead of Trump's inauguration in America, GB News spoke to Reform UK leader Nigel Farage.
The other thing that's been discussed by everybody is what the hell were you thinking about with the Chagos Islands, Diego Garcia? The honest truth is that our government is getting off to the worst possible start with the incoming Trump administration. And my other worry, if we pivot towards the European Union, that makes getting a trade deal of some kind with Trump's America even more difficult.
Meanwhile, 4 days of special events are beginning ahead of Donald Trump's inauguration as president. Thousands of people are expected to march in protest, including women's rights groups. The 47th president's inauguration will be the first to be held indoors since that of Ronald Reagan in 1985. And that's because of cold weather. Temperatures are expected to drop to minus 14 degrees Celsius. Back here, a £20,000 reward is being offered in the search for the parents of babies abandoned in London over 8 years. The 3 children, the third of which, Elsa, was only an hour old when she was found abandoned in a carrier bag a year ago, are full siblings. Babies Harry and Roman were discovered in similar circumstances in 2017 and 19. Police say, despite reviewing 450 hours of CCTV while analysing DNA, their parents remain unidentified. It's believed that the mother, at least, has lived in the same area of East London for the past 6 years. And your last one for now. Tributes continue to pour in for the death of Denis Law, footballing legend. A true character, the Manchester United and Scotland player, Law scored 237 goals for United, and he died yesterday, aged 84. Well, earlier, GB News spoke to the England goalkeeper, Peter Shilton.
He was just a brilliant player. I mean, he was a lethal finisher, you would say. He was always in the right place at the right time. If as a keeper you dropped the ball, he'd be there to knock it in the net. And he was a brilliant player.
You're up to date. I'll see you again in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Will, and welcome to you, Lot. Thank you for joining me on this pretty nippy January afternoon. Really appreciating your company this afternoon. You don't want to go anywhere because we have got a packed show coming up for you, so we're going to get straight into it. Let's get cracking, shall we? Now, yesterday, farmers once again took to the streets to protest the government's changes to inheritance tax. This time, they decided to park and parade outside supermarkets, who they claim have failed to support them during this ongoing battle with the government. So tell us more about what happened yesterday and how they're getting on negotiating with the Prime Minister, who's never actually in the country, is he? Is farmer Rob Harris. Rob, thank you for joining me this afternoon. Really appreciate your time. So bring us a bit up to date on what happened yesterday.
They've been having displays outside supermarkets and at warehouses, the supermarket distribution centres in the last few weeks, just to highlight the issues that are still going on and just really wanting to get the supermarkets to stand with us.
And Asda have done so, haven't they? They have issued a statement saying that basically farming is a vital part of our supply chain. We need a confident farming sector.
Yeah, and also I think Morrison's have issued something very similar, saying that they don't want to be sort of targeted because they have got British agriculture and they're going to stand with. So hopefully we can all put pressure on the government to take food security seriously.
This is the thing, Rob. What difference will this make to the government, do you think, if any?
Who knows? When they just got a mindset that they can get their food from anywhere across the world, and they don't take food security serious at all, do they? That they can just buy it in cheaper from anywhere else. And it doesn't take much to remember back during COVID what happened there.
Are they even talking to you still, Rob? I mean, DEFRA seems to be pretty quiet on everything at the moment. Is there a dialogue going on?
I'm sure there's a lot going on in the background with NFU. I'm not involved in those talks, but I'm sure they haven't, they haven't took their foot off the accelerator with them. And something's got to happen. They've got to come to the table and discuss.
I was saying, Rob, what is the next step? I mean, you're getting the supermarkets on side, which is brilliant. I mean, you've got the public on side. You've certainly got GB News on side. We support you wholeheartedly. But it's like, what's the next step? I mean, if the government don't budge, and as far as we're aware, they don't show any signs of doing so, where do farmers take it from here? Are you going to get more militant, like some of the action we've seen in France in previous years?
Well, we don't want to see anyone starve or not be able to go and buy food from any protests that we do. It's just highlighting the fact of how fragile the food chain and supply chain is, and how do we go on and really raise the question: can the supermarkets do more? Can they pay fair? I think that's probably a bigger part of it. There's a lot of work to be done within the industry. Talking, getting in touch with the public, keeping everybody in the loop of what is happening. And we're not against paying tax, but we can't afford to pay the inheritance tax if we don't earn enough profit. And if on the greater good of this, if they don't come and say they're going to alter the inheritance tax back to how it was, but they up the limit or up the threshold to a more sensible value, because all they've done is created a bigger loophole for people to invest money up to £1 million, essentially tax-free. If we can get a fairer trade set up between all different sectors, then that will be positive out. And you know, when farmers are earning money, we pay tax like anybody else that pays tax on money and profits they make.
This is the thing, Rob. You are being incredibly understanding. You're not saying, right, OK, you know, this is wrong. I mean, the story is £1 million and over, you pay 20% inheritance tax, which is going to ruin a lot of family farms. We have interviewed so many farmers on this show and on various other shows across GB News who have told us horrific stories of how they're going to suffer, what they fear for their future, what's going to happen to their children. We're talking about family farms that have been in families for generations.
Yeah. So, you know, I'd be fourth generation here. And if the proposal, if something happened and one of us died in the wrong series, we would be looking at, you know, inheritance tax of around 600,000. And you've got to pay that over the 10 years. It's just not viable.
And what effect is it having on you personally, Rob, you and your family, your mental and physical health? I mean, you must be worried sick about the whole thing.
It's the level of uncertainty and also, like, how much investment do you make? Like, the grant's been pulled back. We'd all got plans to do. We're not going to do them. The BPS has been removed. That's a huge chunk of profit out of any farm business, and it's all happened so fast. We haven't had time to restructure, and nobody knows which way we're meant to be heading and going, really, because they don't know themselves. And you can't change your farming business overnight. It takes, you know, you plant your corn October and you harvest it in July, August. Whatever we make a decision of now generally is a 12-month action cycle minimum. It just doesn't happen quick. You can't change things fast, and they've really.
And Rob, just finally, I mean, if things go ahead and, you know, the government continue ignoring you, what do you think the future of farming in this country is going to be?
The future of farming in this country, if they don't change their mind, we will have to see more joined up thinking, I think, with the supermarkets and really try and put forward to a fair price that we're getting paid. Because if we don't, agriculture will not be the same, and you will see a lot of solar panels and parks all around the country because they would be sold off because they wouldn't be a viable farm. If we had to sell 25% of our farm to cover an inheritance tax bill, we wouldn't be viable where we are.
OK, Rob, thank you very much for talking to me this afternoon. That's Rob Harris there, a farmer who is suffering at the government's hands. And, yeah, good luck to him and everyone else out there. OK, now let's see what my wonderful panel make of this. I have broadcaster Mike Parry and the founder of Turn Left Media. I love the way you do that. Curtis Daly.
Hello, how are you?
Hello.
And
good
hello,
to see you
how you
again.
doing?
You can do the thumbs up thing.
I'll do the thumbs up.
You can do thumbs up.
Well done.
Both allowed to do thumbs up. OK, now, the reason I wanted to talk to the farmers today is obviously we've seen the recent protest up in Leicestershire where they were sort of in their tractors outside supermarkets trying to get them on board, which thankfully, you know, Asda and Morrison's are backing. But we're not hearing from the government on this at all, Mike. It's not going away. We've heard from Rob there that families are suffering.
Well, no, but you've heard from the government. And the government aren't going to change. They don't want to. They see farmers as rich landowners. God knows how, because most of the farmers I've known during my life work to live and live to work. They don't actually make any profit, but they're looking after the land in this country. 70% of the land in this country is not developed land, and a great percentage of that is farming land. And the farmers produce food and look after the land. They actually look after the green fields in this country. It's all very well to say, oh, well, you know, £1 million. Most farms are worth at least £1 million if you take into account the machinery that's there, that's needed, the investment, the fields, the worth of their land itself. And to say that they should pay tax on it, what they do is, and they have done this for centuries, not just generations, centuries, they hand it down to their children to keep running the farm. If they can't do that and they have to sell it and pay 20% tax, the land will probably go to an overseas investor. It will go to a big conglomerate. It will be held in trust. Trust don't pay income tax or inheritance tax, because trusts are perpetual. They don't die. So the whole thing is a completely, utterly flawed scheme. We want food in this country. We want farmers to feel protected. We want them to feel loved by the rest of the country. The fact that Asda and Morrison's, two of our biggest supermarket chains, have recognised the value of farmers where the government can't, to me, says it all.
Absolutely, fair play to them. I mean, we have seen, Curtis, this happened in Australia, where farmers have been forced off their land, and China comes in and buys up huge swathes of the Australian country.
Well, first of all, I'm glad that you're talking about capital flight overseas. That's something I actually agree with you. I don't like it when foreign entities, companies or states start buying up our stuff. I do want to draw a distinction, though, between farmland owners and farm workers. I think you're converging the two, because I stand up for farm workers. But if we look at the statistics... Well,
farm workers wouldn't be workers, excuse me, cutting in, unless there were farm owners. Somebody's got to run the farm, somebody's got to run the farm, and somebody's got to work on it.
Yeah, but obviously the tax is not going to hit the worker. So what I mean, so let me just lay this out straight. So it's 200. Those that pay the inheritance tax is 200 acres of farmland. That's equivalent to 100 football pitches. So the idea that these farmland owners are struggling, I think, is for the birds. Now you might say,
where's their wealth?
You might say you might say that tax is then pushed onto the workers. And my response to that is, if farmland owners, who are, by the way, the inheritance tax is not 40%, it's 20%. It's the end of a tax break, and it's not even the full 40%. If they're going to push that onto the farmland workers, that tells me that the farmland owners don't have the farmland workers' interests. I understand. First of all, I completely support the right to strike. I'm consistent here, even if I disagree with these people. Good for them that they're standing up for what they believe in. But I think there is a slight false narrative that it's struggling people, when I don't think that's the case. Now, they can sell their land, or they can actually give it to their kids and have to pay inheritance tax on it. What I'm saying is, I want to make sure that we have a sensible debate and we distinguish between the workers on the land and the farmland owners. I do not want to see. I do not
workers as well. They would say, you know,
they would, but it's not going to hit like those that earn like £12,000 to £20,000 a year. They're not hit by that tax. It's those like Jeremy Clarkson, for example. I mean, he admitted that he bought some farmland just so he could evade taxes. He's not standing in the trenches with those workers, because if this tax goes through, he's going to say, well, I'm going to pass that cost onto the workers who work the farm. That doesn't seem very fair.
Clarkson, he was standing in the trenches. He was standing outside.
Farm workers will just go away and get a job somewhere else. I mean, I don't know why
is that true?
Of course it is. I don't know why you've brought farm workers into the equation. I've never heard farm workers being a part of this argument before.
Well, maybe we should do that. We should speak about the workers, because they're the ones that create the food. They're the ones that do most of the work. So actually,
if there's no farm,
focused around these people.
If there's no farm, there won't be any farm workers. And there won't be a farm if it's sold to pay inheritance tax on a family who've been there for hundreds of years.
Who's doing the selling, though? So these farmland owners, if you're saying they're going to...
will have to sell to pay the tax to the government.
But again, it's 200 acres of farmland. It's 100 football pitches. That's massive. It's not a small
it's not massive.
Farm.
It's not massive.
It is very big.
Have you ever seen the size of a combine harvester?
I've seen some.
Believe me, a combine harvester could cover your 100 football pitches in about 3 minutes.
And
it's not
on
massive.
that bombshell... I never thought we'd end up talking about combine harvesters.
I'm from Bristol. I hear it all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what a combine harvester is. I'm from East London. No idea. Any case, we have run out of time on that one. But if you want all the best analysis and opinion on that story, and it is an important story, go to our website, gbnews.com. I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News. Up next, we'll be looking back at some of the bigger talking points of the week, including whether that triple lock on pensions is under threat from literally everybody. All of that and much more to come. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. You don't want to go too far. We're back very soon. See you soon.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Tell us about the backlash situation, first of all.
Yeah, so the Duke and Duchess of Sussex visited a local food distribution centre, handing out food parcels to those who had been displaced or emergency service workers as well. And they happened to be captured by a local news crew. I think it was a Fox news crew. It's part of World Central Kitchen. That's a charity that they have supported for a number of years now, who've been doing this food distribution things. Whether or not it was a photo op, it's really unclear. I don't think we're ever going to get the answer to that. They didn't look like they were made up to look glam for the television. It looked genuine, but of course we know Meghan is an actress as well, so I'll let you make up your own mind on that one. But then we found out very late last night that the Duchess has asked Netflix to postpone her new lifestyle programme, and the Duchess has released a statement actually, and she says, "I'm thankful to my partners at Netflix for supporting me and delaying the launch as we focus on the needs of those impacted by the wildfires in my home state of California." She thinks it would be inappropriate to launch a glossy programme where she's in a $5 million mansion cooking food. It's an 8-part series, and hopefully by that time these fires will be well and truly extinguished.
Well, they're also getting criticism in the US as well from Jason Bateman's sister, that's the actor, talking about that photo opportunity that people are calling it, saying that Meghan Markle and Harry are no better than ambulance chasers and they're disaster tourists.
It is difficult, isn't it, for Meghan and Harry trying to find their place in the world. Are they media, entertainment personalities, celebrities, and doing Netflix and all the rest of it? Or are they going to be humanitarian workers like perhaps being members of the royal family would be? And I think at the moment they're kind of straddling those two different worlds, aren't they?
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back to The Weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. Thank you for your company this afternoon. Really appreciate it, but you don't want to go out. It's horrible out there. Now, one of the strangest stories of the weekend, there was a lot of competition, let's be honest, was Kemi Badenoch confirming that the Conservatives may be looking to backtrack on their previous support of the pensions triple lock. The Conservative leader did say that she does support the triple lock in concept, but her party will begin means testing the policy, saying we've got to give something to the next generation. To be honest with you, I actually have no idea what Kemi Badenoch said. I mean, she seemed to say one thing, then contradict it, and then go back on another. And I would humbly suggest... I'm going to go to the youngster on the panel first.
Please do.
I would humbly suggest, Curtis, that if you are leading the Tory party, most of your voters are a certain generation, you don't start messing around with pensions.
There's
two... Do you understand what she actually said, what she meant?
Oh, I can try and dissect it.
Briefly and quickly, and make it more sense than she did.
There's two red lines as a Tory leader. You don't go after people on mortgages and you don't go after pensions. Oops. And why has the Tory party collapsed in the last couple of years? Because they screwed with people's mortgages and now they're talking about means testing. But I find it funny, because Kemi Badenoch, I thought she was better in the leadership contest, but I think that Robert Jenrick was weak sauce, so she looked better than she actually is. It's quite remarkable how poor of a leader she is. And she said, I'm very economical with my words. I never say anything I don't mean. Yet she's come out and attacked Labour. For me, a policy I think is wrong. I think we should keep the winter fuel payments. She's attacked Labour for means testing on winter fuel payments and then saying, but I support means testing on the triple lock. So why are you attacking the Labour Party for something you're going to do? What we should do is protect the triple lock and keep the winter fuel payments. Look, obviously,
I love you.
Yeah,
thank you.
I'm not an older person, but one day I'm gonna need to rely on this. And this benefits if I'm lucky. If I do get a pension at 31 years old, maybe it's not going to happen. But even if it doesn't happen to me, I care about other people. I care about pensioners. And by the same breath, I care about those who, unfortunately, lose their jobs or are on unemployment. I don't want to see welfare cuts across the board because I'm consistent. But Kemi Badenoch, really remarkable how she doesn't see the contradiction in her own statement.
But then Labour, obviously, as they would do, sort of like thought, oh, hello, there's a little chink in the armour here, we're going to jump straight in there. Then they carried on digging their own hole, because when they were asked about means testing, pension, triple lock, they refused to rule it out.
No, exactly. I agree with Curtis on Kemi Badenoch. I don't know where she's coming from. She's done a U-turn on this already. Yeah. I mean, surely she should have been aware of Theresa May and how Theresa May managed to wipe out the majority that she had in the Commons by attacking pensioners. Yeah. She went after the dementia tax,
wasn't it? Yeah.
Unbelievable. Yeah. So, you know, it was called the grey tax, the dementia tax. She had a 16% lead in the election that she fought, right? And all of a sudden, when one of her ministers mentioned older people having to pay more to look after their own care, that disappeared. So if Kemi's got any sense of history of her party, she knows exactly what Curtis said. Don't attack pensioners. Pensioners don't vote for Labour. They traditionally vote for Conservatives because they've seen more of life than younger people. The other point, Curtis, is that I don't believe in your lifetime you'll get a state pension. I think it will have gone by the time you are 60. If you do get one, you won't get it till you're 75, because we all know the demographic of the ageing population that we have, and they're going to have to push back the age of the pension further and further. So it's a very serious subject, and Kemi Badenoch shouldn't have been so vague about it. Shouldn't have been talking about... I mean, look, I can understand somebody like Lord Sugar, somebody like Richard Branson, somebody like Mick Jagger. Of course you'll means test them, because I spoke to Lord Sugar once, and he couldn't get hold of anybody in the appropriate government department to say, I don't want a pension. Literally, it just kept coming into his bank account.
I would go further and say, because some people have said, well, as a young person, we've not had it eased in terms of certain things when it comes to the housing crisis, so why should we care about the pensioners? And I say this, first of all, if you take care of one group, you would take care of everyone. And I don't think we should be pitting generations against each other. I also think as well, let me finish that point. Let me finish the point. I also think that even if there are some pensioners who don't need it, I'm still happy for my tax money to go to them, even if it means they get an extra holiday out of it. Because I like the idea in the year of 2025 now, that it's not just about scrimping by, but everyone should have a decent life, a decent job, have a car, or go on holiday. So even some of my tax money is going towards a pensioner who isn't scrimping and saving. I'd rather do that, because if you start going for these people, they cut and they cut and they cut, and it'll get even worse. And then you start cutting other things, and
that's the promised land. I mean, it's the promised land. Oh, we're all, you know, going to be looked after and all that kind of stuff. Thing is, you're a young man, 31 years of age, you've got loads of energy, something goes wrong, you pick yourself up and you go again. Trouble with pensioners is that, bang, they get a slap, they haven't got the opportunity or the energy to get up and do it again. So I agree with you, I think the triple lock's got to stay, but politicians have got to be much clearer about what they think about it. And Kemi Badenoch, I mean, Ian Duncan Smith once said, oh, I'm the quiet man, and sometimes the quiet man can come up with the best ideas, do more thinking than talking. She's not doing any talking.
I am sick and tired of this debate, what we've had for years and years, which is about, we need to cut this to spend on that, we need to cut that to spend on this. There is another way. There's always been another way.
You've got a black hole.
And, no, there's another way, and you go for the corporates who... Either you raise wealth tax or introduce wealth tax, you may not agree, or you just recover the taxes they've evaded or avoided, instead of saying, right, we're going to cut winter fuel payments so we can pay for this. I'm sick and tired. I mean, we need to grow a backbone in this country, because all we do is make our policies based on what the corporations do. If we had a backbone and said, you know what, I'm going to stand up to the political establishment and the corporations. We can have winter fuel payments, we can have a triple lock, and we can invest in our NHS and our public services without cutting anything. Because we've had 14 years of austerity, and no one's happy.
You must have seen the story this morning that 10,000 millionaires have left the UK since the Labour government announced they were going to crack down on
they've announced that they haven't done it. There's by the Capital Flight.
They've gone and they've taken their businesses with them.
I will say, Mike, Capital Flight is largely a myth. First of all, there's two things I want to say on that. First of all, the assets they leave behind, they can't take it with them, so their assets are still here. And secondly, they still have to bring their businesses into this country. Now, there are a lot of ways you can do that. If someone says, do you know what, I'm going to up and leave, we'll tax them on the way back in. Because we're a market of 70 million people. Like, think about it, if you think taxes are too high for this people, you say, well, I'd rather have 50% of something than 100% of nothing. They are going to sell in this country. And I'm sorry to say, but largely it is a tool to say, well, if you tax us, we're going to leave. That's very convenient that they say pay that.
Yeah.
Whilst the rest of us,
but they do
we
leave.
ain't got a choice. We've got to pay the taxes. So I just think
they
it's
do leave, and they have left,
No.
and they're not paying any taxes now, and they were paying great taxes before. I'm sorry, the top 5% in this country pay 50% of tax. It's the top 5% who are going, and we're going to lose all that tax money.
I think it's largely a myth. There are people who announce it. The people who will say it, and we get scared and we do something about it. But there are so many different policy ideas, and I'm not seeing that floated in the media.
I just want to say, Curtis, that being the sort of person that hangs around with multimillionaires, I do know at least 2 people that have. I mean,
the personal that's personal anecdotes there, but
circle of multimillionaire chums that have literally sold up.
But let's reform our tax system so we can do something about it rather than just say we need to
22% across the board, in my view.
Yeah, I mean, look, if someone said to me, do you want to pay an extra 1% on my tax for a better NHS, I'd do it as well. But I would also... I'll pay for you. You can
pay for me.
I'd expect the corporates and those who should be paying their fair taxes, if they were patriotic about this country, want to see a thriving country and want to do business in this country, they should pay the tax too. We should all do it for a better society.
Right. OK, all right, we've run out of time again. Gosh, you two are rather clever. Thank you very much for that one. I'm Denis Law, this is GB News. In just a moment, we'll be speaking to the member of the London Assembly, you won't believe this, who clashed with Sadiq Khan over knife crime. But first, let's get those news headlines from Will Hollis.
Thank you, Dawn. At 32 minutes past 12, your top story. Israeli ministers have given full approval for a ceasefire and hostage release deal, pausing the war in Gaza. After a 6-hour meeting, the decision was made to support the deal at the final moments. In a phased release, the first 3 hostages will be freed at 6 o'clock on Sunday, followed by 30 more over a 6-week period. Women and children, plus older men, will be the first to be released. British hostage Emily Damari is reported to be amongst the first 33 hostages leaving captivity, according to the Jewish Chronicle. In return, Palestinian detainees will be released, and there will be a sharp increase in humanitarian aid to the enclave. Back here in the UK, thousands of people will march through London, calling on the government to stop arming Israel. In a protest that's just beginning, the pro-Palestine march planned to assemble outside the BBC building, accusing the corporation of bias. However, because of its closeness to a local synagogue, the Met Police has restricted the group to Whitehall. 1,000 officers are on duty in the capital monitoring the march. A 61-year-old woman has already been arrested on suspicion of inciting others to breach public order conditions. Sir Keir Starmer says the UK-Poland treaty would cover all aspects of the threats that the UK faces and the steps that the UK must take to meet them. This Polish counterpart, Donald Tusk, also said he hoped for a return rather than a Brexit, as he said the pair discussed the European Union in talks. They told reporters that they discussed how the countries can combat people smuggling gangs and Russian aggression while bolstering European security. Donald Trump is to review the Chagos deal when he returns to the White House on Monday. The president-elect's team directly intervened in the British government's deal, demanding the delay. That's according to The Telegraph. Fears over Chinese influence if the strategically important islands are returned to Mauritius are fueling the delay. The US has a permanent military base on the East African island. And your last one for now, a £20,000 reward is being offered in the search for the parents of 3 babies abandoned in London over an 8-year period. The third of which, Elsa, was only an hour old when she was found abandoned in a carrier bag a year ago. The babies are full siblings. Babies Harry and Roman were discovered in similar circumstances in 2017 and 2019. Police say despite reviewing 450 hours of CCTV, their parents remain unidentified. Those are your top stories for now. I'll be back in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, welcome welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's going to be cloudy, dull and cold in the south, with some brighter spells developing elsewhere and feeling mild in the north. Having a look at the bigger picture then, we have an area of high pressure extending across the south of the UK, squeezing the isobars further towards the north and west, with a weak weather system out towards the west. So a cloudy picture to come across much of southern England and into East Anglia, but where we have a bit more of a breeze, we will see some breaks in the clouds developing, especially across northern parts of Cornwall, Devon, into Wales and northern England. Best of the sunshine though across the far north and east of Scotland. Highs here possibly up to 13 degrees, but cold underneath this persistent cloud further towards the south. As we go through Saturday evening then, clearer skies across north and eastern parts of Scotland, but still quite mild, temperatures coming up at around 7 or 8 degrees. Cloudy across Northern Ireland as well, but clearer skies across northeastern parts of England and Wales. Temperatures quickly falling away here, so we could see a touch of frost for some of us, but still holding on to this blanket of cloud across the southern parts of England. And as we go through Saturday night, we'll start to see some drizzle just pushing up from the English Channel, some of that falling as snow grains. The cloud will continue to push its way northwards, but we'll see some breaks in the cloud, and where we see the lengthiest clear skies, a touch of frost and possibly some fog patches, but a cold night to come with temperatures really struggling. So as we start Sunday morning then, a cloudy, murky picture out there with some drizzle and snow grains across parts of England. A cloudier picture across Wales and northern England as well, with just this frontal system across Northern Ireland just gradually pushing its way in. Otherwise, temperatures a touch down for all of us on Sunday, still feeling cold underneath this cloud.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome back to The Weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. You've just about had time to make a cup of tea and sit down again, so don't move a muscle because this is the most shocking thing I've seen in a long time. We recently revealed that knife crime figures jumped by 4% in the first quarter of last year, increasing a staggering 50% since Mayor Sadiq Khan took office. Sir Sadiq Khan, remember people, Sir, took office in 2016. In an effort to drive those numbers down, reforms plans would include recruiting close to 1,000 new police officers for a specialist knife crime task force. Makes sense to everybody, doesn't it? But this is what happened when the member of London Assembly, Alex Wilson, asked for Mayor Sir Sadiq Khan's support on this matter.
The year's only just begun, and already we've seen at least 9 major stabbing incidents on our streets. My team has been working on a budget amendment where we would like to fund almost 1,000 police officers to deliver a targeted knife crime task force. And the way we do this is reduce the cost of your staff budget back to 2016 levels. That would give us the funding to do this. Now, would you encourage members of other groups, perhaps your own group in the Labour Party, perhaps the Conservatives, perhaps anybody, to second that amendment?
As a rule of thumb, I never encourage anyone to work with reform.
What?
What did he say?
I mean, as a rule of thumb, I don't encourage anyone to work with reform, even when we're talking about kids dying on our streets.
Unbelievable, that.
Any case. Joining me now is Reform UK London Assembly member Alex Wilson himself. Alex, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. I think I've seen a lot of mad stuff in politics recently, but this was, it made me stop in my tracks. I was shocked by what I heard. So we're saying what my interpretation is, Sir Sadiq Khan is putting politics before kids dying.
Yeah, absolutely. I was quite shocked myself when he replied in that way. You know, we've come up with a way of funding a plan to deliver, say, almost 1,000 police officers to set up a dedicated knife crime task force in London, get on top of these rising numbers that we've seen already this year. The year's only just begun. We've had 9 major stabbing incidents in London. That's one every other day. You know, we want to do something about that, and we've come up with a funded plan. We do it by taking the scale of his bloated staffing budget back to the level that he inherited in 2016. When Boris was mayor in 2016, I don't remember anyone saying that London was undergoverned, that he didn't have enough staff, enough press officers, that kind of thing. So we can go back to those levels, put that into frontline policing, and that gives us the opportunity to then carry out more stop and search, more just general police presence and weapons sweeps to try and get these knives off our street. Because business as usual isn't working. Too many kids are getting stabbed. We want to do something about it. But it was staggering. He won't work with us, not because he didn't necessarily agree with the idea, but simply because of where it was coming from Reform UK, the fastest growing party in the country, and I think in London as well, and yet he won't work with us, purely out of politics. Staggering.
Alex, I mean, obviously you work with him, but even you must have been literally horrified by what you heard then.
Yeah, absolutely. As I say, it's the reason he refused to work with us or refused to encourage other members of other groups to work with what we're proposing is purely because of the party that I represent, not because of the idea that I was putting forward, but because I'm Reform UK. And I think it shows that the mainstream parties are scared of us. You've seen our membership surge. We're getting branches set up right across the country. Our polling, we're now effectively neck and neck with both the other main parties. Things are really happening out there. A lot of support for what we're saying. But, when it comes to trying to actually turn that into real action in London to save lives, he just wasn't interested.
Alex, I'm sorry, I'm not interpreting this wrong, but that means, another kid will die probably in the next few days. I mean, Sadiq can't have blood on his hands over this one.
Well, that's you can say that. I would agree, but fundamentally, we want to make sure that this doesn't happen. And I'll be looking to work with members of other, but we've got the budget meeting coming up. I'm going to be speaking to the leaders of the other groups to see if anyone will second this amendment or perhaps put something similar on their own lines that maybe I could support. But fundamentally, it's about trying to get knives off our streets to make sure there are no more tragedies, no more instances where parents get a call from the school to say, really sorry, your lad's not coming home today, not because he's in detention, not because he's doing an after-school club, but because he's been stabbed. We can't allow that to keep going on. So business as usual isn't working. Something needs to change. That's what we're trying to do.
Alex, how hopeful are you that with our Sadiq Khan in charge as mayor still, that things will change anytime soon?
Well, he's got another 3.5 years to go of this term of office. The important thing that I can do as an Assembly member, I'm there to hold him to account, as are the 4 other Assembly members. I'll keep asking the questions, I'll keep working hard, I'll keep tabling those things, and we'll see. But if he carries on acting the same way as he did on Thursday, then we can't really hold our breath, can we?
No, we can't. Alex Wilson, thank you very much. You're doing a sterling job there, holding the mayor to account. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. I'm sorry, I just think that was the most astonishing thing I'd ever heard. And that was then compounded when Susan Hall asked a question about grooming gangs. And let's face it, if you don't know what a grooming gang is by now, then I don't know what rock you're living under, but it's not a nice place. And Sadiq Khan refused to acknowledge what a grooming gang even was. That also was equally shocking. Well, I've still got Mike Parry and Curtis Daly with me. Mike, what do you make of what you've just heard? One day for Sadiq Khan. I'm sorry, I think he should have got the sack over that.
Well, it's a complete rejection of our democratic process, isn't it? If you're supposed to be leading London, then surely you're supposed to work with every member of the London Assembly, and to single one out and say, as a rule of thumb, I don't work with you. Outrageous, utterly outrageous. But I intensely disapprove of Sadiq Khan and the way he's run London. As Alex there said, the numbers of people he employs has doubled since he got in 2016. His budget has doubled 2016, but still we can't seem to find the money to introduce proper policies on the streets to stop children killing each other. And let's be absolutely clear here what it's all about. It's all about a lot of black children fighting other black children and killing them. And if we had stop and search on the streets of London, I believe that would stop. He's even been asked to consider a policy for twice a year, for 1 week only, to introduce stop and search to, you know, act as a circuit breaker for the terrible crimes. Only this week we've seen the end of that terrible trial about the little girl in Croydon, 15-year-old, murdered by a boy carrying a knife because of a row over a teddy bear, and yet Sadiq Khan refuses, utterly refuses, to bring in a coherent policy to try and stop the avalanche of deaths of children on the streets being killed by knives. OK, supposing his view that stop and search is discriminatory, because that's what we believe he thinks. Well, introduce another policy, come up with something. Don't just sit around and every time a child gets murdered, say my thoughts are with the family.
Yeah, but which we hear a lot, isn't it? Thoughts and prayers with the family. I mean, Curtis, children will die because of that attitude. This is playing politics, like we've seen with the grooming gangs for a certain extent. People playing politics with children's lives.
Every political party is playing politics. Look, I'm not a Labour voter, by the way. I'm not exactly Sadiq Khan's supporter. Here's what I think he was trying to do, and it's not whether I agree with it. I think he was trying to basically get more information. Like the whole grooming gangs. He knows what a grooming gang is. But Susan Hall, I mean, whoever she is.
This is the other incident where
I mean, she lost to Sadiq Khan. That shows how good she is. But she was saying about grooming gangs, and he said, well, what do you mean by that? Now, of course, the narrative here is, he doesn't know what grooming gangs is. I suspect that he was thinking that maybe she meant Pakistani men, and he wanted to say it. And I say it with your chest. If you think grooming gangs is linked to Pakistan men, just say it.
Well, everybody else does.
And by the way, I mean, you misunderstand. I'm not saying there's an issue with Pakistani men. The data doesn't reflect that. What I'm saying is, don't be a coward and say it. That's why Sadiq Khan
does actually reflect that with the grooming gangs we're talking about.
No, so I've done.
Leaving that aside, that is another debate.
Okay, it's another debate, but with the information is actually inconclusive. Some is saying there's an overrepresentation of white people. Some is saying there's an underrepresentation of white people. Vice versa. The information is inconclusive. What I will say though is, talk about weaponisation. First of all, I mean, if I was Sadiq Khan, I would work with anyone, because I am sick of the state of this country.
Absolutely.
This country has gone so far downhill. I'm sick of crime. I'm sick of knife crime. But we can't pretend that Reform aren't jumping on a bandwagon either, because I think Reform don't care.
Stop knife crime?
No, because think about it. This is a political opportunity from Reform. And I'll tell you what. I'll tell you why.
Stop children being killed.
I'll tell you why. Don't interrupt me. I'll tell you why. Because there was a debate last week about violence against women and children. Do you know how many Reform MPs turned up to that debate? 0. There were 15 debates in total. Richard Tice turned up once. Not a single Reform member went to the other ones. So I think it's a political opportunity.
Well,
now that doesn't mean that Labour MPs. That doesn't mean that Labour aren't at fault here. I think the real issue, because you brought race into it. You said there's an issue with black violence. The real issue is austerity. We've had years and years of school closures. We've had years and years of community centres closed down. These kids got nowhere else to go. So we need a holistic policy rather than just looking at afterwards.
Austerity, he's doubled his budget.
I'm going to have to finish that one. We have run out of time on.
But it's a disaster all across the board, and every political party is including this.
I'm Jordan Leeson. This is GBNews. There's loads more coming up on today's show. As we pay tribute to Manchester United legend Denis Law, all of that and much more to come. This is GBNews, Britain's news channel. We'll see you very soon.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Lately, it's getting much better. The people getting more educated in terms of overall well-being of the skin health rather than temporary aesthetic treatments. Because most of the treatments in aesthetic, it doesn't change the texture of the skin. It just gives like volumetric result or remove the wrinkles temporarily.
So what are the most popular treatments that people are after?
According to a statistic report, first is anti-wrinkle, then dermal filler, then energy-based device. But lately, biostimulators also became very popular. And
what do you mean by biostimulators?
Biostimulator, any substance that can change the texture of the skin, or like it will lead to postpone the aging process, or proliferate more collagen, increase the elasticity of the skin, such as polynucleotide or exosome, or different vitamins and minerals in the form of mesotherapy considered as a biostimulator.
Turkey's a particularly popular destination because the costs are so much lower. There have also been a lot of horror stories about what can happen when things go wrong, even people dying from post-surgery complications. What would you advise people?
Choose, as a practitioner or surgeon, very carefully and never prioritize price over quality. This is your face, after all, your body, after all. And mistakes can be reversible. It can be irreversible, and sometimes it's not like a booking restaurant or hotel. It's a sensitive matter that can affect their confidence and skin and body for life.
Yeah.
So they need to choose very wisely. They need to search what kind of methodology that particular surgeon, they perform the treatments. Are they using any safety tools?
GB News, the People's Channel.
This January, history will be made again.
Join GB News as we bring you full coverage of Donald Trump's presidential inauguration.
From the swearing-in ceremony to the celebrations, we'll be there to capture every moment that shapes the next chapter of world politics.
The best guests, live updates and unparalleled insight as Donald Trump becomes the 47th President of the United States. The inauguration Monday from 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. This is The Weekend. I'm Dawn Neeson. That's all I'm allowed to say because we're running out of time. But Manchester United legend and Scotland football star Denis Law has died at the age of 84. Tributes have been paid across the sporting world, with former United captain Brian Robson calling him a true gentleman. I would add the word legend to that. I'm joined by sports broadcaster and sports supremo, Aidan McGee. Aidan, a sad loss. We sadly knew it was coming as well, obviously.
Yes, exactly. I mean, you're talking here about one of the greatest centre-forward talents these islands have ever produced. He was a man who was one of 7 kids growing up in a council flat in Aberdeen, 2 miles away from Pittodrie, where he used to go and watch Aberdeen if he had the money. And he came to Yorkshire, to Huddersfield, when he was 15. They didn't even recognise him, the officials from the club, on the platform, because he was so slightly built and he had these wiry NHS glasses because he had a squint. Huddersfield Town paid for him to have an operation to correct that squint, and so his vision improved and he became unerringly accurate in front of goal. He was fantastic in the air. He had that famous right-handed celebration, which was immortalised in the statue outside of Old Trafford. And then on to Manchester City, on to Torino. 11 seasons at Man United. The league title in 65, 67. Backed onto that was the European Cup in 68. 237 goals in 404 matches, 30 in 55 for Scotland as well. Absolutely extraordinary. And, of course, the role he played in rebuilding that United side that was decimated, of course, by the Munich 58 air crash in Germany. You can't be underestimated, because he was also the glue between that holy trinity between Best and Charlton and himself, because Best and Charlton didn't get on that well. And, he was great friends with both.
Aidan, thank you so much. Sorry it was so brief. And also thank you to Mike Parry and Curtis Daly for joining me. We've run out of time, and thank you for your company. But don't go too far, we are coming back. But first, you need to know this. It's the weather. Good luck, everybody.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. A cold and cloudy picture in the south. We will see some brighter spells through today, but milder in the north. Having a look at the bigger picture then, we have this area of higher pressure extending across the south of the UK. Bit more of a breeze further towards the north and west, with a weather front just lingering out towards the west. So through the rest of the afternoon and evening time, we hold on to this blanket of clouds, so murky conditions across much of England and Wales. That cloud will continue to push its way further towards the north. We may see some breaks, and when we see any lengthy clear skies, that's where we'll see a touch of frost developing and perhaps some fog patches. Clearer skies, though, across north and eastern parts of Scotland, and here the winds will gradually ease as we go through this evening and overnight. So to start Sunday morning then, a bright but cold start across northern parts of Scotland. A bit more cloud further towards the south, but still cold here. Mild across Northern Ireland to start the day, 7 or 8 degrees. But where we see any clear skies to start, we may see a touch of frost in places. But otherwise, across the bulk of England and Wales, a cloudy picture to Sunday morning with some drizzle and even some snow grains from the English Channel just pushing their way further towards the north. So through Sunday, most of us seeing a cloudier picture compared to Saturday. Best of the sunshine across north and eastern Scotland, with this weather front just slowly trying to edge its way eastwards. But for all of us, it is going to be a cold day, especially under this persistent cloud. Temperatures struggling here at only around 2 or 3 degrees. And as we go through Sunday evening, this weather system further towards the west will continue to push its way eastwards, so some rain and drizzle at times across Northern Ireland and the Western Isles. And then into next week, while spot the difference, a lot of cloud, patchy rain and drizzle at times, highs of up to 8 degrees. Bye-bye.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's just 2 weeks left to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. £50,000 in tax-free cash. How would you react if you won?
Oh my God.
That's a big surprise.
Amazing. Just the best feeling ever.
I'm in shock. That is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Have you noticed that more and more stores are closing? Well, last year, apparently 13,000 stores closed for the last time on the high street.
Well, experts warn the worst is still to come for our small businesses.
Well, let's talk to retail expert Jeremy Baker. Good morning to you, Jeremy. How bad is it and what can be done?
Well, nothing can be done about it. Retail is like that. It's boom and bust operation. So last year, let's say you had a shop and it was booming. This year, the consumer can just change their mind. They don't need to come back to your shop ever again.
Well, it is sad, Jeremy, because our high streets are the beating heart of our communities, aren't they? And for many people, I know I can relate to my high street, it is such a depressing sight, walking down there and seeing them all boarded up and closed down.
But how often do you walk down that boarded up high street? I think people move on to something else. The online world is very big. Yeah. And lots of other things are very exciting. And so people, you know, the shop, I like to go to my GP in a shopping centre and get my tests done there rather than tramp off all the way to the GP, for example. And children could go to little schools in the high street. I've seen that happen already. So lots of things could happen to the high street. It could be much more a social centre. Much more kind of like pubs, coffee shops, all that. Charities. I don't see anything wrong with charities taking over, but the idea of this shop-centred high street finished, that's gone. Never coming back. Goodbye. It's not sad, it's just life.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon. It's 1 o'clock on Saturday, the 18th of January. Halfway through dry January. Good luck. This is the weekend on GB News. Now, Sir Keir Starmer has promised to deliver justice to the victims of grooming gangs, with 5 new local inquiries launched earlier this week. But has the government done too little too late to really crack down on the criminals? And farmers took to the streets once again to protest the government's changes to inheritance tax. But is their ongoing struggle beginning to fall on deaf ears? And yes, we are just 2 days away from Donald Trump's inauguration as he prepares to return to the White House. Could this be the change the US is after, or is there more trouble on that horizon? So I'm Dawn Neeson, and this is The Weekend. So thank you for joining me on this crisp, I think is the word to describe it, a Saturday afternoon. Really appreciate your company, but it's so cold outside, you might as well just put your feet up, have a cuppa and keep me company, because I really enjoy it. And this show is indeed not my show. It's all about you and what you've got to say on all the stories we're talking about today, or anything you want to have a chat about, to be honest with you. It's January, it's Saturday, why not? So let me know your thoughts. It's very simple to get involved. Just visit gbnews.com/your say and join in our conversation. Now, I have two new young men keeping me company today. I know, lucky me, I spoil myself, see. Contributing editor at Novara Media, Michael Walker, and Conservative councillor, Michael Goodwin-Freeman. You can work here if your name begins with M today, OK? The letter M. But before we get stuck into today's stories, let's get the news with, Will Hollis. There's no M involved there. Here, Will, take it away.
Thanks, Dawn. Your top stories at 1 o'clock. Israeli ministers have given full approval for a ceasefire and hostage release deal, pausing the war in Gaza. After a 6-hour meeting, the decision was made to support the deal at the final moments. In a phased release, the first of 3 hostages will be freed on Sunday, followed by 30 more over a 6-week period. Women and children, plus older men, will be the first to be released. British hostage Emily Damari is reported to be among the first 33 hostages leaving captivity, according to the Jewish Chronicle. In return, Palestinian detainees will be released, and there will be a sharp increase in humanitarian aid to the enclave. Some breaking news coming in the last hour. Back here in the UK, at least one person has been arrested at a pro-Palestine march in London. Thousands of people are calling on the government to stop arming Israel. The pro-Palestine march had been planned to assemble outside the BBC, accusing the corporation of bias. However, because of its proximity to a local synagogue, the Met Police has restricted the group to Whitehall. Yesterday, a 61-year-old woman was arrested on suspicion of inciting others to breach public order conditions. 1,000 officers are on duty in the capital, monitoring the march. Sir Keir Starmer says the UK-Poland treaty would cover all aspects of the threats to the UK, threats that the UK faces, and the steps needed to meet them. This evening, Polish counterpart Donald Tusk also said he hoped for a Britain rather than a Brexit, as he says he discussed the European Union with Sir Keir Starmer. The pair told reporters they had talked about how the countries can combat smuggling gangs and Russian aggression while bolstering European security. Sir Keir says Poland and the UK have shared values and shared interests, adding that the two countries will include deepening ties between the two nations' defence industries.
We spent much of our time today focusing on defence and security. As two of Europe's biggest military powers, with our troops serving together, guarding the eastern flank, we share an unbreakable commitment to NATO.
Donald Trump is to review the Chagos deal when he returns to the White House on Monday. The president-elect's team directly intervened in the British government's deal, demanding the delay, according to the Telegraph newspaper. Fears over Chinese influence, if the strategically important islands are returned to Mauritius, are fueling the delay. The US has a permanent military base on the East African island. Ahead of Trump's inauguration in America, GB News spoke to Reform UK leader Nigel Farage. Meanwhile, 4 days of special events are beginning ahead of Donald Trump's inauguration as president. Thousands of people are expected to march in protest, including women's rights groups. The 47th president's inauguration will be the first since to be held indoors since 1985 because of the cold weather. Temperatures are expected to drop to minus 14 degrees Celsius. A £20,000 reward is being offered in the search for the parents of 3 babies abandoned in London over 8 years. The 3 children, the third of which, Elsa, was only an hour old when she was found abandoned in a carrier bag a year ago, are full siblings. Babies Harry and Roman were discovered in similar circumstances in 2017 and 2019. Police say, despite reviewing 450 hours of CCTV and analysing DNA, their parents remain unidentified. It's thought that at least the mother has lived in the same area of East London for the past 6 years. Those are your headlines. I'll be back in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Will. I just want to cross-ref one of Will's breaking stories there about the ceasefire. This is a message from John. Says, I thought once there was a ceasefire, the pro-Palestinian marches would stop. Silly me. And indeed, Will's story just said there's been one arrest at a pro-Palestinian march in London today. So we'll bring more on that breaking story as when it happens. But now let's get stuck into today's story, shall we? Pressure is piling on Sir Keir Starmer to launch a national inquiry into grooming gangs, rather than the 5 local inquiries which were announced earlier this week. There seems to be a growing movement now building in the Commons as well, with Blackburn's independent MP Aden Hussain also backing calls for a public inquiry, saying gangs continue to haunt his constituency. Joining me now is social policy analyst Dr. Rakib Ihsan. Rakib, thank you very much for joining me today. I mean, this story is not going to go away, nor should it go away, and it should have been tackled, some would say, decades ago when we first knew this was happening. What do you make of the recent developments?
Well, I think it's a step in the right direction, but I agree with those who are ultimately of the view that these 5 local inquiries, along with this 3-month national audit, you call it a snap audit, is insufficient. It doesn't amount to a full and proper national public investigation into what I call group localised child sexual exploitation, in more informal terms, street-based grooming by organised networks. And to my understanding, I'm not sure if these local inquiries have statutory powers in line with the 2005 Inquiries Act, which means that it wouldn't have the powers to compel witnesses to attend, and nor would it have the powers to take evidence under oath. And there's obviously the risk that with these local exercises, you may have potentially compromised public institutions, ultimately marking their own homework. But what we really want to see is external investigators rigorously scrutinising those institutions.
Yeah, they don't have statutory powers, Rakib. I mean, so there is they can't summons people to give evidence. You know, there is very little they can do. We also know that it's £10 million funding across 5 areas. That's like £2 million. What can they achieve with that? Meanwhile, there's 2 recent stories that girls are continuing to suffer in towns up at potentially over 50 towns, although potentially all over the country. Girls are still suffering. Why, and this is the big question, why are the government not willing to hold the national inquiry that the girls themselves want?
Well, I think that what we have is a very serious problem, which is a nationwide problem, which is precisely why I think just limiting this to 5 local areas on, as you mentioned, a shoestring budget of £10 million, for me, is completely insufficient. And we also know that, based on reports, that much of this is going on in traditionally Labour-controlled areas. And I think that this is precisely why I think the Labour government has to commit to a national public investigation, because if it fails to do so, it does leave itself vulnerable to the accusations that they may well be doing this out of self-interest, out of partisan self-interest. And I think that would do it considerable electoral damage in the long term.
Over 80%, or well, before the Gaza situation, but, you know, over 80% of Muslims in this country are Labour voters. We know that several Labour MPs came very, very close to losing their seats to independent candidates during the last elections, including Jess Phillips. Do you think that politicians are so wary of losing their seats and losing votes that they are actually playing politics with children's lives?
Dawn, I'll slightly push back on that. If you see the recent polling by JL Partners, if you look at public support for holding a national inquiry into grooming gangs, BAME, it's not necessarily an acronym I like, but BAME, members of the BAME community were more likely to support a national inquiry into grooming gangs than the white population. And actually, if you look at the data when it comes to opposing a national inquiry into grooming gangs, 10% of BAME people are against holding a national inquiry. That goes up to 15% for the white population.
No, totally.
So I don't really... So just basically, I don't buy the idea that if Labour was to hold a national inquiry into grooming gangs, that it would lose considerable ethnic minority support. The data actually tells you the opposite.
OK, so why are they not doing it, Rakib? This is what I keep coming back to. The only really important people, this is not the Labour Party, it's not the Conservative Party, it's not Elon Musk, it's the victims, many of whom are living a life sentence. There was a grooming gang sentenced this week, and they were sentenced for crimes they committed 2 decades ago, and they were sentenced to 3 years for raping 13-year-old children.
Well, I think that there'll be a very serious problem in local authorities which are traditionally Labour held. I think that is the issue here. And I think that when you look at these scandals, they involve various organs of the British state. You should look at local councils, police forces, social services. We need to look at these so-called safeguarding partnerships. How well are they performing when it comes to protecting the most vulnerable in our society? And I think that should be natural territory for the left. So I do find it quite disappointing that the Labour Party seem very reluctant to commit to a national public inquiry into grooming gangs.
So if it's not, they're not worried about losing their votes. I mean, are they worried about an inquiry maybe getting a bit too close to home to some of the Labour councils that were in charge when these assaults were happening and are probably still happening?
I think, in my view, I think that's a more plausible explanation. And I think that when you look at Rotherham, for example, Rotherham has traditionally been a Labour-held council, Labour-held local council. And I think that's why possibly the national Labour leadership is reluctant to commit to a national public inquiry, because then you would see the variety of institutional failures which took place over this issue in Labour-held local authorities.
And Rakib, one final question because we're running out of time. Just in the previous hour of the show, we had a panellist saying, you know, disputing again the fact that I used the phrase Pakistani heritage, Muslim men involved in these gangs. He said, no, white men are more likely to commit. Why are we still having this conversation, this whataboutery? What about all the white men that commit child abuse? Why are we still frightened of admitting what is actually going on in these gangs?
Well, there was an academic paper which was published back in 2020, which found that men of Pakistani Muslim heritage dominate group localised child sexual exploitation prosecutions. And I think that we have to be honest, when there may be a particular ethnic minority group which is disproportionately represented among perpetrators of a particular crime. That's not to say that this is a Pakistani problem or a Muslim problem, but I think that if there is a particular group which is disproportionately represented among those who perpetrate such heinous crimes, then I think we need to look into the cultural and societal drivers at play.
Yeah, brilliant. That's a wonderful Dr. Rakib Hassan. Thank you very much for joining us. Always very much talking common sense. OK, let's see what my panel make of this. Contributor, editor at Novara Media, Michael Walker, and the Conservative councillor, Matthew Goodwin-Freeman, both joining me in the studio today. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Matthew, I'm going to start with you on this one. I still can't get my head around the fact that the only important people in this are still not having their voices heard, and that's the victims.
Yeah, I was actually, when I was listening in, I was thinking of all the things I frankly don't care about the ethnicity. Crime is crime. We need to remember the victims at the heart of this. And I was shocked by what was said there about a gang getting only 3 years.
3 to 14 years. This is a gang.
3 to 14 years.
Bradford Crown Court.
That's ridiculous. You get nearly as long for putting bad, nasty words on Facebook nowadays. I mean, this is absolutely incredible. The whole story has exploded again since the new year. I find it ridiculous that we're now going to have local inquiries paid nationally. I mean, but it's still not a national inquiry and it's still not what people want. No Labour MP has actually voted for another national inquiry. They can talk as much as they want, but the vote is what matters. And we're seeing now, the new poll came out this week saying that 1 in 3 Labour voters have grown more sceptical about multiculturalism in the wake of this whole scandal. So this is going to this won't go away. This is going to keep growing and keep growing. I think the government just has to do the right thing and say, look, we messed up. Let's have an inquiry. Let's get on with this. And in the meantime, all of the inquiries we've had so far, all of the reports we've had so far, let's get on and actually start delivering those things, because that's what victims want. They want action. They don't want words.
Michael?
Yeah, I mean, I'm open-minded about whether or not a national inquiry or a local inquiry works better. Well, one person I take very seriously about this is Alexis Jay. So she was the professor who wrote the original review into Rotherham, which really blew open a lot of this. She was the person who sort of first said that 1,400 girls had been affected. She's obviously spoken to a lot more of the victims than I think anyone on this panel. And she seems very sceptical about the idea that a national review would be a good idea. She says, let's just get on and implement the reviews that have already existed. It was her who also chaired the public inquiry, which was on a statutory basis, into child sexual exploitation, which did include a module on group-based.
It was so wide-ranging.
It was wide-ranging. But why I say I'm open-minded is because I think there's people I really respect saying, we don't need one, and there's people I really respect saying, we do. And I suppose the danger, I think, in potentially the way we've been talking about this is making it, in a way, more political than it needs to be, because the Tories were in power for 14 years. In your intro, you said, is this too little, too late from the Labour Party? Well, this is a scandal. You know, most of the really bad cases, I mean, as you say, there's concerns that this is still continuing, but the sort of most shocking cases were over a decade ago in Rotherham.
It's been going on for at least 3 decades.
And so it seems a bit strange now, when Labour have been in power for 6 months, to say, why haven't they done anything about it, when the Conservatives were in power for 14 years? Now, I don't want to necessarily say the Conservatives were wrong to not have that inquiry. What I'm saying is, it seems to me that reasonable people disagree about the best way to deal with this crime, which we all agree is absolutely horrific. And so I think there's a danger of saying, are they not having a national inquiry because they've got Muslim voters? Are they not having a national inquiry because it will implicate them? It seems to me that lots of people who are very well researched on this, very well connected to the victims, are saying different things.
I was just going to come back and say, actually, weirdly, I somewhat agree with you. This is something that shouldn't be politicised. I could sit here and go, oh, well, you know, we set up the Grooming Gangs Task Force, Rishi Sunak did this, Sajid Javid did that, Theresa May did that when she was Home Secretary. I could sit here and do all that and defend it and turn this into a Labour versus Conservative thing, but that's the wrong thing to do. The thing that we need to focus on here is what the victims want. The victims are saying that they want action and they want justice, and this is still going on today, decades and decades later. So that's the thing. We could all sit here and talk about this, but that's going to do nothing to further getting justice for these victims, and that's the main thing.
And how we get that justice, whether or not a national inquiry is the best route, that's where I'm open-minded.
Yeah.
And I think lots of experts seem to be open-minded as well.
OK, yeah, well, what do you think? gbnews.com/your say. It's your opinion that counts on this show. And indeed, for all the best analysis and opinion on that story, please do go to website gbnews.com. Now, I'm Dawn Neeson, this is GB News, and we've got loads more stuff coming up for you. We'll be looking back at some of the bigger talking points of the week, including whether the triple lock on pensions is actually under threat from both our main parties. All of that and much more to come. This is GB News at Britain's News Channel. We'll see you very soon.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Figures released by the National Child Measurement Programme in 2024 found that almost 1 in 10 children was obese in the first year of school. Children living in deprived areas are twice as likely to be overweight as those in more affluent parts. Organisations like the Prepped Foundation are educating youngsters about healthy eating by giving them the skills to create balanced meals. TV chef James Golding has joined the foundation as the head of food education, and he joins me now to talk about the work. James, lovely to see you here.
Good to see you too. So PrEP's used to be Table Talk Foundation, and it's now obviously PrEP for Life, PrEP for Knowledge. It's basically a charity to encourage kids to have a better understanding of food, but at the same time enjoy cooking and hopefully make better food choices in their life, as well as perhaps, you know, share the information we give them with their families.
Do you see them developing an understanding of the difference between a healthy and unhealthy food?
Yes, I think that, you know, kids tend to sort of be taught a lot of this in school, but being able to actually ask questions to a chef and be able to cook with produce which they know is one, that is going to be tasty because they've tasted it, but two, open their eyes to food that they may not have tried before. I think that, you know, I think a lot of kids say they don't want to try stuff because they don't like the way it looks, but the way that we produce our sessions, you know, we encourage the kids to try, and I think it really does open their eyes. It's very easy, I think, currently to be able to make easier choices, say fast food choices or you know, that type of thing, and it's obviously giving people the ability to make the right choices, but also the skills to be able to do it. So I think it's something that needs to be addressed and something that really needs to be pushed, and that's what we're doing as a charity.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. Thank you for your company this afternoon. One of the strangest stories, and there's a lot of competition from yesterday, was Kemi Badenoch confirming that the Conservatives may be looking to backtrack on their previous support of the pensions triple lock. The Conservative leader did say that she does support the triple lock in concept, but her party will begin means testing the policy, saying we've got to give something to the next generation. OK, I'm going to come to you first on this one, Matthew, because you are the Conservative member of the panel.
Yep.
What did you make of what she said? Did you even understand what she was trying to say?
Let's just be really clear. No. She is not saying that we're going to revisit the triple lock, we're going to get rid of the triple lock, nothing like that. Let me just be really, really clear.
She didn't say that.
But the whole point of yesterday, and Kemi obviously made her speech earlier on the day, was talking about resetting the Conservative Party, looking towards the next generation, that sort of thing. And I think where this has got mixed up is by talking about looking at things again and all that sort of stuff, you open the door for, are you going to review this, are you going to get this? And she talked later on in the day about means testing, and very quickly talking about triple lock means testing gets put into one sentence. She's saying that we need to look at means testing more things, but she made it very, very clear and said, no, that doesn't mean the triple lock.
It wasn't the best communication in the world, was it?
Yeah, I've always said comms is key. You know, it used to be the economy stupid, now it's comms stupid. I plead and plead and plead. Please, can we all just be far clearer? I can say it down the camera. No, no, no. Who said that? Oh, Thatcher, that was it.
Yes, indeed, she did.
I'm not quite sure you have the authority to do that.
Well, that's what she said. She said, no, it's not.
Oh, she said that, right.
She said, no, it's not. See, that's I'm not making a decision on behalf of the Conservative.
On behalf of the Conservative Party, Councillor Ferraro.
Now, you can talk on the other side, Michael. Go on, what did you make of what Kemi had to say? Did you... was it clear for you?
I like her. You never know what she's going to say next. In the leadership election, she sort of said... Maternity pay seems to have gone a bit too far. Now she says she's going to means test the state pension.
She didn't say that.
She didn't say that.
Well,
this is my point. No, but this is my point. This is my point. We have to be really, really clear about what was and what wasn't said and what was spin afterwards. She did not say we're going to means test the triple lock. She did not say we're going to get rid of the triple lock. The Conservative Party brought in the triple lock. We kept it throughout the whole 14 years, even during the COVID years where it meant it'd be raised by a ridiculous amount and people said no, for what, you know, scrap it or whatever. We didn't. So let's just be really, really clear. She did not say
she
that we could get rid of the triple lock.
But she didn't even have to use the word mess that she used to try and make the point.
Yeah.
Because then the Labour got involved, and by refusing to rule out means testing pension triple, it's sort of doubling down on it, Michael.
Yeah, they sort of said, we want a part of this confusion too.
Yes, good luck.
We're not the only people who can be ambiguous when we don't need to be.
No.
Or it's not just the Tories who can be ambiguous when they don't mean to be.
Anything you can do, I can do better, yeah.
I don't think any of them are going to get rid of the triple lock. I mean, because it's very popular with pensioners, and pensioners are a big voting bloc.
Yes.
It's an interesting sort of social policy problem, because I do think we have a bit of a problem at the moment where, because voters or older people are such a powerful voting bloc, it's very difficult to do expensive things that help younger people, right, because they're not that significant. So there are lots of people sort of in policy circles suggesting maybe the triple lock is something we do need to abandon. The argument against it is that the state pension is still really low. It's only 11,000 a year, which is tiny. Like, by international standards, that's very low. So the idea that sort of pensioners get their incomes protected and no one else does, that rankles people a little bit, younger people. But when you consider that the state pension is already very low, I think it becomes more expensive.
As many of you out there are saying, though, that we've paid into the pension all our lives. Yeah. It's like, you know, I know it's lumped in the benefit budget, but it's not a benefit. You know, many of our viewers and listeners are saying, I've paid into this for, you know, 40-odd years.
Yeah, and I slightly disagree with you, Michael, about pensioners being a big voting bloc that needs to be up there for grabs. They're not going to go vote Labour. Have you looked at the past 200 days? You know, cutting the winter fuel allowance, any pensioner who thought Labour will be better for me is now going, what on earth did I do? There's no chance. We've got pensioners freezing this winter. You know, Labour's own impact assessment said that 4,000 pensioners could die over the next coming weeks because of cutting the winter fuel allowance, and then went and did it themselves. So, you know, pensioners are a big voting bloc. They're not going to be voting for Labour. And, yeah, I just don't understand why everyone seemed to have so much confusion over the last couple of days. Like, let's all just have very clear policies, clear standing points, and let people decide when it comes to it.
Actually, there was one party, as many of you are pointing out, there was one party that were very clear about what they're going to do with the triple lock, and that is the Reform Party. Michael, who said, we're not touching it, we're leaving it exactly as it is.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what the Conservatives and Labour will also say in 4 years' time, but Reform are a bit better at not being ambiguous, I suppose.
Do you think the triple lock will
last? They find it easier
last?
to say yes or no.
I think Labour are going to get rid of it.
No, I think it will last for the next 5 years, because, you know, you've said they have made... I think they recognise that their biggest political mistake up to now was on the winter fuel allowance. Now, again, this is one where sort of people in policy circles have for a while said that this isn't the best use of money because it's going to lots of very wealthy pensioners. I don't think the Labour Party are particularly good at politics. So Rachel Reeves sort of saying, let's save £1.4 billion by annoying the country's pensioners. Clearly wasn't worth it in political terms, was it? But I think they are going to be a lot more careful when it comes to pensioners over the next 4 years.
So the winter fuel allowance was Labour's biggest mistake, bigger than the farmers' tax, the prisoners' early release scheme, calling everybody far right who wants justice, and all of the rest. That's the biggest mistake, you think? I think Labour have made a litany of mistakes since day one. People are just getting fed up of it. People are so disenfranchised from politics now at the moment, sort of just going, oh, let's just turn that off and then come back again when I need to go to the ballot box. But no, I think, you know, pensioners have contributed throughout their whole lives, working and working and working, waiting for this happy retirement, that age that's kept creeping up and creeping up. And then they get there. And as you said, it's one of the lowest state pensions in I think, Europe.
In Europe, it is,
and it's one of those things where, really, we need to protect our pensioners as much as we need to look to the next generation. But it can't be a one or the other, which politics has sort of done over the last however many years.
I mean, in theory,
You're someone looking to the next general election, aren't you? That's very
politicians. I'm a young person who cares about other people.
In terms of the Labour Party, there, I think this myth that they're calling everyone far right is not true.
I think that was a bit of a lack of... Do you think they are?
Yeah, they are. Any time something goes wrong, it's the far right. It was far right to want another inquiry.
No,
well, that makes Labour far right now.
That's not what he said.
He did.
So Keir Starmer has not said if you want another inquiry, you're far right. He said that this debate has brought in a lot of far right people. Now, Tommy Robinson, do you think he's far right?
I do.
OK, good. So that's basically what he was referring to, right? Elon Musk is saying, free Tommy Robinson. Tommy Robinson's a hero. We need a national inquiry. Keir Starmer's saying, I don't really want to be having this conversation on these terms, right? That's very, very different to calling anyone who wants a national
Jumping
inquiry
on the far-right bandwagon.
That's what he said. He said, if you want another national inquiry, you're jumping on the far-right bandwagon. The bandwagon of the far right.
No, he did not say that sentence in that order, right? He complained about people who were jumping on the far-right bandwagon. And there are people like Kemi Badenoch, who was in government for years and years and years, right, and didn't call for a national inquiry. Then the moment that Elon Musk calls for it on the same day that he says free Tommy Robinson, she's like, oh, all of a sudden, yes, I think we need a national inquiry. Now, she was there jumping on the bandwagon of an issue which was brought to our attention, but again, by the far right. That doesn't mean if you want an inquiry, you're far right. But she was jumping on a bandwagon. I don't think we can take her seriously when she says that, because she didn't seek one when she was actually in a position to make it happen.
All I will say is I don't think you can jump on the bandwagon of a political direction. You're jumping on the issue. And so
why didn't you jump on the issue when she was in government?
My point is that we've seen this before. I've seen it with Sadiq Khan at People's Question Time, where I've asked him questions before about ULEZ or improving London, all these sorts of things. It is so easy for a left politician to go far right, and that seems to quell the entire conversation. Politics is all about debate and discourse, agreeing to disagree at times. But we saw it in the Assembly with Reform, with Sadiq Khan just saying, not going to talk to Reform, don't work with Reform. It's not how politics should be. It's what politics is now, and that's why people are just fed up.
I think it's silly to say you won't work with people who are your opponents. I agree with that. I do think that Keir Starmer, as a leader of a party, is right to call out Elon Musk, who was both saying free Tommy Robinson, then calling Jess Phillips a genocide rape apologist or whatever it was.
Yeah, he did,
all sorts of things, in a way that I think he knew would have made her vulnerable. We've had 2 MPs killed in the last decade. So I think Keir Starmer standing up and saying this is unacceptable from Elon Musk, who has become, I didn't used to think Elon Musk was far right, but I think if you've made it your principal campaign to free Tommy Robinson, then it is pretty much fair enough to say you are. So he was there hitting back against someone who was agitating for the far right, as well as shining light on an issue that we all agree is very important.
Do you think that Elon Musk is just not understanding of the way politics work in this country when he's talking about the whole Tommy Robinson issue? Do you think he genuinely might believe that Tommy Robinson is in prison because he was speaking out about the grooming gangs?
Now, I know people...
Or do you think he is far right?
Well, I know people think these terms are overused, but I think if you look at what he tweets and who he supports, he is a white supremacist. I think he believes that sort of Western civilization... He supports Donald Trump.
You what? Are you saying Donald Trump is a white supremacist?
No, I don't think Donald Trump is as ideological as Elon Musk. Elon Musk, if you look at what he's tweeting and who he's backing, right, he's backing the AfD, who are a party who...
The far right in Germany.
The far right in Germany, who have used some Nazi slogans, right? It's not particularly subtle. The AfD aren't like Reform. Like, I don't think Reform are white supremacists, right? But if you look at what Elon Musk is saying, he grew up in apartheid South Africa, and I don't think he's said anything which makes it seem like he didn't like the apartheid. So I think there are many reasons to believe that Elon Musk is very ideologically aligned with the politics of someone like Tommy Robinson, not that he's purely confused.
OK. Final word to you, Matthew?
Well, I just think it's interesting when we talk about Elon Musk. A lot of people criticise Elon Musk getting involved in British politics, but it was absolutely fine for however many Labour MPs to go over and help in the US elections. Like, the politics works both ways. If you don't like foreign interference because it disagrees with what you say, well, then also you can't be sending MPs over to help in an election.
I mean, I think there's a difference between knocking on some doors and buying a social media platform for £44 billion and then spreading a bunch of misinformation and targeting it at MPs. Like, there's a difference between those two things.
Still interfering,
yeah.
OK, right, fine. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We'll be coming back with more of that. I'm Dawn Neeson, Mrs. GB News, and there's loads more coming up on today's show, including, yes, we are talking about Reform and whether they are really a threat to Kemi Badenoch and her party. But first, let's get the news headlines with Will Hollis.
Thanks, Dawn. The time is 33 minutes past 1. Your top story. Israeli ministers have given full approval for a ceasefire and hostage release deal, pausing the war in Gaza. After a 6-hour meeting, the decision was made to support the deal at the final moments. In a phased release, the first 3 hostages will be freed on Sunday, followed by 30 more over a 6-week period. Women and children, plus older men, will be the first to be released. British hostage Emily Damari is reported to be amongst the first 33 hostages leaving captivity. That's according to the Jewish Chronicle. In return, Palestinian detainees will be released and a sharp increase in humanitarian aid will land in Gaza. Back here in the UK, 6 people have been arrested at a pro-Palestine march in London. 4 are for public order offences and 2 for breaching the conditions that have been put in place. Thousands of people are calling on the government to stop arming Israel. The pro-Palestine march was planned to assemble outside the BBC, accusing the corporation of bias. However, because of its close proximity to a synagogue, the Met Police has restricted the group to Whitehall. Donald Trump is to review the Chagos deal when he returns to the White House on Monday. The president-elect's team directly intervened in the British government's deal, demanding the delay, according to The Telegraph. The US has a permanent military base on the East African island, and ahead of Trump's inauguration, GB News spoke to Reform UK leader Nigel Farage.
The other thing that's been discussed by everybody is what the hell were you thinking about with the Chagos Islands, Diego Garcia? The honest truth is that our government is getting off to the worst possible start with the incoming Trump administration. And my other worry, if we pivot towards the European Union, that makes getting a trade deal of some kind with Trump's America even more difficult.
You're up to date. I'll be back in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's going to be cloudy, dull and cold in the south, with some brighter spells developing elsewhere and feeling mild in the north. Having a look at the bigger picture then, we have an area of high pressure extending across the south of the UK, squeezing the isobars further towards the north and west, with a weak weather system out towards the west. So a cloudy picture to come across much of southern England and into East Anglia, but where we have a bit more of a breeze, we will see some breaks in the clouds developing, especially across northern parts of Cornwall, Devon, into Wales and northern England. Best of the sunshine though across the far north and east of Scotland. Highs here possibly up to 13 degrees, but cold underneath this persistent cloud further towards the south. As we go through Saturday evening then, clearer skies across north and eastern parts of Scotland, but still quite mild. Temperatures coming up at around 7 or 8 degrees. Cloudy across Northern Ireland as well, but clearer skies across northeastern parts of England and Wales. Temperatures quickly falling away here, so we could see a touch of frost for some of us, but still holding on to this blanket of cloud across the southern parts of England. And as we go through Saturday night, we'll start to see some drizzle just pushing up from the English Channel, some of that falling as snow grains. The cloud will continue to push its way northwards, but we'll see some breaks in the cloud, and where we see the lengthiest clear skies, a touch of frost and possibly some fog patches, but a cold night to come with temperatures really struggling. So as we start Sunday morning then, a cloudy, murky picture out there with some drizzle and snow grains across parts of England. A cloudier picture across Wales and northern England as well, with just this frontal system across Northern Ireland just gradually pushing its way in. Otherwise, temperatures a touch down for all of us on Sunday, still feeling cold underneath this cloud.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Oh, there you are. Have you got a nice cuppa in front of you now? Welcome back to the weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. And now, the Conservative Party should be concerned about Reform UK securing major defections to their side. It's happening quite a bit now, isn't it? This is following several local councillors changing allegiances. Nigel Farage is now reportedly targeting Conservative MPs with a pre-existing relationship to veteran Brexiteers. Joining me now is an expert on this subject, former spokesman for Reform UK, Gawain Taylor. Gawain, thank you very much for coming in today, dragging you away from a greasy spoon, was it?
Probably.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, we know how to live here. We are keeping it real on GB News. Now, we had a Tory councillor who has defected in the last couple of days, and this is Thomas Kerr, who's said that he's going over to Reform.
Yeah, and he was the leader of the Tory group on Glasgow City Council.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but I don't think it's the largest political group in the world.
No, I don't know. I don't think...
Doesn't have much chance of becoming council leader anytime soon.
No, Tories in Scotland are quite rare, it has to be said. But, I mean, we've obviously got several big Tory scalps in the past.
Correct.
Is this a deliberate ploy of Reform to target the Conservatives?
I think I know that we sent, the party sent a letter to all Tory councillors saying, hello, the water's lovely.
And turquoise.
Indeed. And it will, obviously with all the council elections being cancelled, it's slightly less moot. But there was a very definite feeling that, yes, we are interested in talking to you. Some of them we won't want anyhow, when we look into them more closely because of their belief systems and how they've behaved. But it will be a case, there will be a cut-off point, and that'll be the same with MPs. If you're interested in defecting, you better get on with it. Because when we select somebody, we ain't dropping them just because you're famous. And there is very much a time limit on these suggestions. Yes, you can come, we'll talk to you, see if you have those, agree with us on significant areas of policy. Obviously, they'll have experience, which we lack.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is going to be very useful, because if we do, push comes to shove, and who knows, if we do achieve Farage's ambition in 4 years' time, then we're going to need some level of experience.
You say if. I mean, Farage doesn't even use the word if, does he now? And...
No, but
and your
I'm not Nigel.
The Reform spokesperson...
And I don't get paid by them, so...
No, sure. But the Reform spokesman said, we are going to do it.
Is there a good chance that if you miss the deadline, there'll be a few vacancies when you go through people's old tweets from 10 years ago?
We will be doing that beforehand.
Which particular tweet of yours are you worried about, Michael?
But I think the point is, there will come a time, we're going to select somebody. If you don't jump, sorry, mate, but... too late. And I think there were quite a few people sitting formally with green benches under their arse who...
Sorry for language, sorry.
Under their bottom.
Yeah.
Who looked at Lee Anderson getting elected, the only Tory red wall seat to stay in the hands of that MP, and it did so through Reform. I'm sure there were friends and colleagues of his who sat there going, wish we'd had that courage.
Do you think the way things are going, there might be Labour MPs who want to jump ship?
I think precious few is the answer. And the reason for that isn't the membership or the Labour support base, many of whom are already voting for us, and former Labour people, and at council level there's a few. But since Tony Blair, the sort of patriotic Labour that would be appealed to by the policy platform that we're presenting have been driven out of the upper echelons of the Labour Party. So we may get millions of their voters, but I think it's highly unlikely we'll get many of their figures, because those people are part of this technocratic elite that has been created, and that's not really our people.
Do you think Reform will be willing to accept them?
Depends, again, on their belief systems, what they've done in the past, how they've stood up. But I think you might find a few of them in the House of Lords, but very few on the House of Commons benches, of that sort of old Labour, patriotic Labour.
And Tommy Robinson. We have to mention Tommy Robinson. I mean, this is what Nigel Farage said, an absolute no, but...
We've had this rule for many, many years. We have this rule for many, many years in the tribe, as I call it. People who have worked and voted for parties led by Nigel Farage over the last 20 years, UKIP and then the Brexit Party and now Reform. There has been a basic rule. If you have been a member of the BNP, you cannot be a member of our party. Tommy was a member of the BNP. QED, the whole conversation is moot and pointless. He can't be a member. Because we have rules barring him from being a member, and have done for 20-odd years.
OK, and would you describe Elon Musk as far right, by the way?
I wouldn't. I think he's far out. frankly.
Good answer. Good answer. I love that one. OK, now this is linked, but we're going to move on because this is the story that shocked me most this week. GB News recently revealed that knife crime figures have jumped by 4% in the first quarter of last year, increasing a staggering 50% across Mayor Sadiq Khan took office in 2016. But this is what happened when Reform Member of London Assembly, Alex Wilson, asked for the Mayor's support in tackling the ongoing knife crime epidemic.
The year's only just begun, and already we've seen at least 9 major stabbing incidents on our streets. My team has been working on a budget amendment where we would like to fund almost 1,000 police officers to deliver a targeted knife crime task force. And the way we do this is reduce the cost of your staff budget back to 2016 levels. That would give us the funding to do this. Now, would you encourage members of other groups, perhaps your own group in the Labour Party, perhaps the Conservatives, perhaps anybody, to second that amendment?
As a rule of thumb, I never encourage anyone to work with Reform.
Hello! We're talking about kids dying on the streets here, and you are political point scoring, would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what Sadiq Khan does. All he does is political point score and refuse to answer. I've asked him questions before at People's Question Time. He's just laughed and sat silently and let the clock run down. Let's remember, this is the man who got knighted for destroying London. I started a petition overnight for a bit of fun and it got 222,000 signatures. You can still go and sign it. People said that his knighthood was the first knife crime of 2025. Actually, it wasn't, because there were 2 teenagers who got stabbed in the early mornings of New Year's Day. He's utterly lost control of London, and the fact that he just blatantly says no one should work with Reform, when the point of politics on the London Assembly is you have to find cross-party consensus, you have to deliver for Londoners. We're seeing crime go through the roof, and yet this is what our mayor does. He plays party politics time and time again, and he won't put Londoners first. And he did it against Susan Hall as well, when Susan Hall asked him to define, when he asked her to define what a grooming gang was, when she asked if we have any in London, she did, and he went, sorry, that's unclear. Could you define it again and again and again? Just refusing to answer the question until the clock ran down.
We know what he was trying to say. He was trying to get Susan Hall to say Muslim.
Yeah.
So he could then
Pakistani
or whatever.
Chuck the far-right card as well in whilst you're at it.
That's what he was trying to do, and was not going to give up until he'd managed to, when she didn't get backed into a corner. The thing about the Alex's amendment, all he was asking for was the ability to debate the idea of transferring money from the mayor's office to police. And he wasn't even saying this must happen. He was asking for it to be debated in a chamber that's largely dominated by Labour.
So what did you make of Sadiq's response? I mean, shocking.
He can't see a goal without scoring in his own net. In that instance. But it doesn't matter, because the demographics of London are such, and the political situation in London is such, that he would get re-elected if he was to stand again. We know that. And we'd be fools to pretend otherwise. Right. So he doesn't have to care.
OK, very, very quickly, Michael, we're running out of time, but quick.
I think that was a silly comment from Sadiq Khan. I also think this idea that he's destroyed London is completely hyperbolic. I live in London, I love it. One of the reasons why rents are so high is because so many people want to live here. So this sort of hyperbolic, London's terrible, it's awful, everything's gone to pot, I just don't think really is borne out in reality.
To be fair, you don't have a black teenage son who's going out on the streets tonight and worrying about where they're going to come home.
Well, but they're not voting Reform, are they? So I think there's a danger here of putting words in people's mouths where...
Built 4% of houses, got given £4 billion.
OK, right, we have run out.
2,500 police.
We can all agree we should build more homes.
Look at his track record.
And have fewer migrants.
We've run out of time on that one. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I'm Dawn Neeson, this is GB News. Up next, as Donald Trump prepares to be inaugurated as president once again, why does he look so miserable in his new portrait? I don't think he does look that miserable. All of that and much more to come. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. We'll see you soon.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Now, we're going to introduce you to Liam Wildish. Liam, well, I'd like to think he's a friend of mine because I follow him on Instagram, on TikTok there as well.
You're a big fan, aren't you?
Big fan, because there's what he does. He's a cleaner. He cleans signs. But the thing is, he's not employed by councils or whatever. He does this voluntarily. And you sort of think to yourself, well, who cleans these signs? Why have these signs been allowed to get into this terrible state of disrepair and filthiness?
So basically, long story short, about 6 years ago, I used to be a window cleaner. In the community where I lived, I noticed all of the road signs were filthy, and I was perfectly equipped to clean them. So basically, I cleaned the road signs as a bit of a thank you to the community and sort of make a little bit of awareness of my window cleaning business at the time. Sort of cleans up the area, makes the road safer, and that's kind of how that started. And people found it like a really satisfying sort of approach. So that sort of led on to today of a video in cleaning the dirty road signs and making sort of satisfying content with it as well.
What is the equipment? What have we got here?
So this is a water-fed pole system connected to a backpack, which is what feeds the water through the end of the brush there. It's perfectly equipped to basically remove this green dirty, it's like a mildew build-up that you get on the signs. As you can see, this is like extremely effective at removing so.
So GBNews viewers, if they spot a particularly grisly sign in their area, then they can get in touch.
They can do, yeah.
And Liam Wildish, the sign guy, can sort you out.
if you find Liam, the sign guy, online, drop me a message, let me know, and I'll add you to my list of places.
GBNews, the People's Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
This January, history will be made again.
Join GB News as we bring you full coverage of Donald Trump's presidential inauguration.
From the swearing-in ceremony to the celebrations, we'll be there to capture every moment that shapes the next chapter of world politics.
The best guests, live updates and unparalleled insight as Donald Trump becomes the 47th President of the United States. The inauguration Monday from 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello and welcome back to the weekend with me, Denis, and for some random reason we were talking about snowballs there because one of my panellists, Michael, not naming anyone, didn't know what a snowball was. OK, right, but we...
You don't. Bring one for me next time.
Well, I'm going to.
Right,
Any case, there's a reason, but yeah, we haven't got time. So, only 2 days remain until Donald Trump is sworn in as the 47th President of the United States. But with temperatures in the nation's capital expected to drop to minus 13 degrees, the swearing-in ceremony has been moved indoors, breaking with tradition. Joining us from Washington, D.C. to discuss this now is Chairman of Republican Overseas UK, Greg Swenson. Greg, thank you very much for joining. You're the reason we're talking about snowballs, by the way, young man. Greg, thank you for joining us. Right, how excited are you? Is it, woo, couple of days to go?
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. There's a lot of optimism in this town right now. American flags flying everywhere. So it's a real sense of optimism, excitement. Great party last night, British-American function put on by a couple of Brits, and it was really great time. Good turnout from the UK.
Yeah, and while we've got it up on screen, that is Trump's official inauguration, our portrait there. What do you make of that, Greg? You happy with that?
Yeah, I think that the president has a funny way of delivering with his photographs, and I think that one kind of looks like a little bit like the mugshot when back in the summer of 22, which went completely viral and actually helped him in the polls. I mean, he was the one who released it himself as soon as it was taken. So. No, it's there's a real, as I said, there's a real sense of excitement and optimism.
It has to be said. You can see them both now, and there is a similarity. Yeah. It has to be said.
Absolutely.
So, Greg, just give us a quick run through of what's happening this weekend. We know the big day is obviously on Monday, indoors for a change because the weather's so bad.
Yeah, they had to do it. It is going to be really frigid here in Washington. You know. Just maybe even 5 degrees Fahrenheit. I can't do my math right now, Dawn, on Celsius. But yeah, record temperature. So I think it was the right move. We expect snow tomorrow, so that's going to make it even more miserable. So I think it was the right move. The Capitol's a beautiful place to have.
Greg, thank you.
It's a really great setting.
Greg, we're running out of time, unfortunately. I'll let you go back to your snowballs. Introduce them to the great American public. That's Chairman of Republicans Overseas UK. Greg Swenson, thank you very much for joining us. Have a lovely weekend. Now, I just thank Michael Walker and Matthew Goodwin for joining me this afternoon. Great debate, as always. And for you lot out there, it is time for the weather. And here it is for you.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. A cold and cloudy picture in the south. We will see some brighter spells through today, but milder in the north. Having a look at the bigger picture then, we have this area of higher pressure extending across the south of the UK. Bit more of a breeze further towards the north and west, with a weather front just lingering out towards the west. So through the rest of the afternoon and evening time, we hold on to this blanket of clouds, so murky conditions across much of England and Wales. That cloud will continue to push its way further towards the north. We may see some breaks, and when we see any lengthy clear skies, that's where we'll see a touch of frost developing and perhaps some fog patches. Clearer skies, though, across north and eastern parts of Scotland, and here the winds will gradually ease as we go through this evening and overnight. So to start Sunday morning then, a bright but cold start across northern parts of Scotland. A bit more cloud further towards the south, but still cold here. Mild across Northern Ireland to start the day, 7 or 8 degrees. But where we see any clear skies to start, we may see a touch of frost in places. But otherwise, across the bulk of England and Wales, a cloudy picture to Sunday morning with some drizzle and even some snow grains from the English Channel just pushing their way further towards the north. So through Sunday, most of us seeing a cloudier picture compared to Saturday. Best of the sunshine across north and eastern Scotland, with this weather front just slowly trying to edge its way eastwards. But for all of us, it is going to be a cold day, especially under this persistent cloud. Temperatures struggling here at only around 2 or 3 degrees. And as we go through Sunday evening, this weather system further towards the west will continue to push its way eastwards, so some rain and drizzle at times across Northern Ireland and the Western Isles. And then into next week, while spot the difference, a lot of cloud, patchy rain and drizzle at times, highs of up to 8 degrees. Bye-bye.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Imagine how £50,000 in cash from us could make your new year go with a bang.
Hi, my name's Victoria. I won the Spring Great British giveaway. So the day we got the money in our bank account, everything just felt a lot lighter. I would say if you're thinking about entering, just enter.
For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop star to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon. It's 2 o'clock on Saturday, the 18th of January, and this is the weekend on GB News, and thank you so much for your company. Now, Sir Keir Starmer has promised to deliver justice to the victims of grooming gangs, with 5 new local inquiries launched earlier this week. But has the government done too little too late to really crack down on those criminals? And farmers took to the streets once again to protest the government's changes to inheritance tax. But is their ongoing struggle beginning, well, it started off falling on deaf ears? And we are just 2 days away from Donald Trump's inauguration as he prepares to return to the White House. Could this be the change the US is after, or is there more trouble on the horizon? I'm doing it. The picture you just saw there was Donald Trump and his mugshot. That's the inauguration picture and his mugshot. In any case, I'm Dawn Neeson. I'm not Donald Trump. Hair similar. And this is the weekend. In any case, welcome for your company today. I really appreciate it. It's a chilly Saturday afternoon out there, the 18th of January, which is officially National Quitting Day. So if you made a New Year's resolution to do more exercise, to eat healthily, or to do the dry January thing, you're more likely to quit today than any other day. So good luck out there. I hope you sit with a nice cup of tea like me. Because this show is nothing without you and your views. So let me know your thoughts on all the stories we'll be discussing today, or anything you want to have a chat about. It's a Saturday afternoon. Very easy to get involved at gbnews.com/your say and join in our conversation. But before we do that, let's have a conversation with Will Hollis, because he's got your news headlines for you. Here he is.
Thanks, Dawn. At 2 o'clock, your top story. Dozens of people have been injured when a ski lift collapsed in Spain. That's according to the regional government. 9 people have been seriously hurt at the ski resort in Aragon. Around 80 people remain trapped, hanging in the chairlift at the ski resort. That's according to the state TV channel TVE. The cause of the cable failure remains unknown. Israeli ministers have given full approval for a ceasefire and hostage release deal, pausing the war in Gaza. After a 6-hour meeting, the decision was made to support the deal at the final moments. In a phased release, the first 3 hostages will be freed on Sunday, followed by 30 more over a 6-week period. Women and children, plus older men, will be the first to be released. British hostage Emily Damari is reported to be amongst the first 33 hostages leaving captivity. That's according to the Jewish Chronicle. In return, Palestinian detainees will be released, and a sharp increase in humanitarian aid will apply in Gaza. Back here in the UK, 6 people have been arrested at pro-Palestinian marches in London. 4 are for public order offences and 2 for breaching the conditions that have been put in place. Thousands of people are calling on the government to stop arming Israel. The pro-Palestine march had been planned to assemble outside the BBC, accusing the corporation of bias. However, because of its proximity to a local synagogue, the Met Police has restricted the group to Whitehall. Well, yesterday, a 61-year-old was arrested on suspicion of inciting others to breach public order conditions. 1,000 officers are on duty in the capital monitoring the events. Sir Keir Starmer says a UK-Poland defence treaty would cover all aspects of the threats that the countries face and how to meet them. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk also said he hoped for a return rather than a Brexit, discussing the European Union with his counterpart. The pair told reporters they discussed how the countries can combat people smuggling gangs and Russian aggression while bolstering European security. Sir Keir says Poland and the UK have shared values and shared interests during his visit to Warsaw, adding this will include deepening ties between the two nations' defence industries.
We spent much of our time today focusing on defence and security. As two of Europe's biggest military powers, with our troops serving together, guarding the eastern flank, we share an unbreakable commitment to NATO.
Donald Trump is to review the Chagos deal when he returns to the White House on Monday. The president-elect's team directly intervened in the British government's deal, demanding the delay, according to The Telegraph. Fears over Chinese influence if the strategically important islands are returned to Mauritius are fueling the delay. The US has a permanent military base on the East African island. Ahead of Trump's inauguration in America, GBNews spoke to Reform UK leader Nigel Farage.
The other thing that's been discussed by everybody is what the hell were you thinking about with the Chagos Islands, Diego Garcia? The honest truth is that our government is getting off to the worst possible start with the incoming Trump administration. And my other worry, if we pivot towards the European Union, that makes getting a trade deal of some kind with Trump's America even more difficult.
Meanwhile, 4 days of special events are beginning ahead of Donald Trump's inauguration. Thousands of people are expected to march in protest, including women's rights groups. The 47th president's inauguration will be the first to be held indoors since Ronald Reagan's in 1985 because of cold weather. Temperatures are expected to drop to -14 degrees Celsius. A £20,000 reward is being offered in the search for the parents of 3 babies abandoned in London over an 8-year period. The 3 children, the third of which, Elsa, was only an hour old when she was found abandoned in a carrier bag a year ago, are full siblings. Babies Harry and Roman were discovered in similar circumstances in 2017 and 19. Police say despite reviewing 450 hours of CCTV and analysing DNA, their parents remain unidentified. It's believed that the mother, at least, has lived in the same part of East London for 6 years. And your last one for now. Tributes continue to pour in from the sporting world and beyond after the death of footballer Denis Law. A true character, that's how some people described him. The Manchester United and Scotland player, Law scored 237 goals for United. He died yesterday, aged 84. Well, earlier GB News spoke to the England goalkeeper, Peter Shilton.
He was just a brilliant player. I mean, he was a lethal finisher, you would say. He was always in the right place at the right time. If as a keeper you drop the ball, he'd be there to knock it in the net. And he was a brilliant player.
That's it. You're up to date. Let's get you back to Dawn.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Will. Got you safely back to me, and thank you very much for your company this afternoon. Really appreciate your company. Love talking to you all. gbnews.com/your say. And a lot of you picking up on the fact that there's, as you just heard in Will's headlines, there's a pro-Palestine peace march going on in London today where there has been an arrest. And a lot of you are saying, including Grumpy Grandad, are saying, why are they still marching? It's been, I don't know, watch the news. I mean, there's ceasefire been agreed. Let me know your thoughts. gbnews.com/your say. Right, let's get straight into today's topic, shall we? One of the government's most controversial policies has been pushed back into the spotlight with snow, ice and sub-zero temperatures hitting many parts of the UK again. It was mild yesterday. We're going back into it again. Cuts to the winter fuel allowances has left thousands of pensions at risk of illness and injury. Elderly and vulnerable members of the public have once again called on the Prime Minister to deliver better support for those living in dire conditions. And this, just as we've heard Labour and Conservatives talk about the triple lock and how the triple lock pension and how long that's going to be in force for. Joining me now is a GB News viewer who has been directly impacted by the government cuts, Joe Letchford. Joe, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. Really appreciate your time.
Hi, Dawn.
Hi. How are things affecting you this winter as far as the government's cuts are concerned?
Well, I have been on before, actually, with Martin. Personally,
I'm better.
yeah. I can manage. Although I'm widowed, I live on my own. I have to pay everything out of one income. But, you know, the £200 I would get, not 300 as they keep telling you, I've been able to sort of, you know, cut back on something else. But regarding the triple lock, this has been going for 14 years now, and I've only had, in the last 2 years, a decent rise out of it. Up until we had the Ukraine war and the gas prices went up and inflation was about 11%, we were only getting about 2.5%. So all those years, which amounted to about £3, £4 a week. And then the war came along, and so it's always a year behind. So we got a good rise, which Starmer keeps telling us, £800 and now £400. But actually, Mr. Starmer, if he's got a moment, he should go back and have a look at his figures, because somebody of my age, we only have £8,814 old state pension. So when we get our 4.1% this time, I should get £300 a year, which is £6 a week, and then I fall into this tax, you know, the 12,570. So I should probably get £3.50 out of that, and a jar of coffee's gone up £4. So, but that's, you know, I wish they'd just tell the truth. And I was actually I've been watching you, obviously, and you've had 2 young guests on, and I thought they'd say, oh, the pensioners. But to be fair to them, they actually stuck up for us. The lad just at the end there, he actually admitted we don't get enough. But yeah, you know, a lot of pensioners are living on £8,800 a year,
which isn't a lot of money in the great scheme of things, Joe. I mean, you are lucky you can afford to put your heating on, but you must have friends who are really struggling.
Absolutely. I mean, I belong to different groups. I play bridge, etc., and that's our topic of conversation all the time. That, you know, you put the heating on, you're watching all the time, you know, shall I press it on? Shall I press it off? I've never, ever had to live like that in my life. I've had to work, etc., but I've always been able to afford to heat my home.
I mean, Joe, you're 78 now. I'm sure you don't mind me saying so. And you've been a widow since you were 50. I mean,
yes.
Did you ever expect that you would end up at the age you are now, and many of your friends, and my mum's in similar category,
yes,
where you are now with a socialist government who are meant to look after the most vulnerable in society?
No, and I've said it. I've got 3 very grown-up sons, and we discuss it. And you know, I've had to work. But when my husband was alive, he had a decent job, although I worked as well, and we brought the boys up. And we always, who invented central heating? That was lovely. And now we can't afford to put it on.
Oh, no.
It's like everything, isn't it? But I literally, I used to have all my lamps on in the house. I have one on of an evening because electricity is so expensive. And I do my bill every week. I put my meter reading in. And last week, when it was very, very cold, 1 week cost me £70 for my gas and electric. So that I'll have to go without something else as the month goes on.
Yeah.
And that's how it's hitting us all.
Yeah.
But
Jo,
we're going backwards, aren't we?
It does appear to be the case. Jo, just finally, very briefly, if Keir Starmer was in front of you now, what would you say to him?
Oh, gosh, I was brought
that we
up
can
not to
broadcast.
swear. Well, I have to say, I listened to all of GB News. They called him an autocrat yesterday, and that's exactly what the man is. He's just running the country for himself. Does he not understand that he's there to serve us? He's serving himself.
Yeah.
Where is he now? Should he not be in America, or did he not get an invitation?
He's on a European tour, evidently. I don't know,
bless.
sorting something out in Ukraine. But, Jo, always a delight to talk to you. That's the wonderful Jo Letchford there joining us, talking about winter fuel. Thank you very much, Jo, and good luck, lovely. And good luck, any of you out there that are struggling. Please do get in touch and let us know your stories, and we will try and help in any way we can. gbnews.com/your say is what you need to do. Now, let's see what my panel make of this. With me now is the former editor of the Labour List, Peter Edwards, and Communications Director at the Institute of Economic Affairs. It's a long title. Reem Ibrahim, thank you very much for joining me. Both looking very checkered.
Yes, a bit tartan today.
Yeah, both look absolutely lovely. Now, the reason I was talking... throughout the show, we've talked to a farmer, we've talked to a pensioner, and we have talked to someone connected to sort of like on the grooming gangs issue, because I don't know about you out there, but I personally feel these are three main areas that really must be going into a new year not feeling, falls of the joy you should be feeling at a new year, because I feel in particular they have been targeted by the Labour government. So I was keen to talk to them, especially seeing as both our Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves think they're doing a good job and have actually said so. So I was keen to talk to them. So that's why we were talking to our lovely pensioner just now, Reem. We are in a new year. Keir Starmer did literally say just a few weeks ago he thinks things are going well. Rachel Reeves has compared herself to Margaret Thatcher. What do you make of what you've heard Jo, our pensioner, say just then, and the way things are going?
It's incredibly tragic, and I think that Rachel Reeves and Sir Keir Starmer are entirely delusional if they think that things are going well. People across the country are struggling, and the real reason is actually that the government have mismanaged the economy. And I don't, by the way, just think this is a Labour Party issue. The Conservatives in government mismanaged the economy entirely. We've seen the highest tax burden since the Second World War. We've seen huge amounts of public money being absolutely wasted over the last few years. And now what we're seeing at the moment is actually any group that was protected by the Conservative Party because they both voted for them. Let's talk about the pensioners or the farmers. Many of them vote Conservative, and of course that's why they were protected. It's political incentives. The Labour Party have entirely ignored those people. I think what's really interesting, actually, is there seems to be a lack of nuance in all of these debates. So, for example, the winter fuel payments. I don't think that every single pensioner should be getting winter fuel payments. I think that if you are a very wealthy millionaire, if you are Alan Sugar, you shouldn't be getting winter fuel payments. However, that kind of means testing being announced literally a month, 2 months before winter means that those people were entirely unable to get pension credit, which means that so many people, so many pensioners went cold this winter. And I just don't think that that's fair at all. Now, if there was some warning, if there was some sort of honesty with the public and actually saying, this is something that's going to happen 6 months or even, before the election, before they were elected, being honest with the public, that just hasn't happened. And of course, as soon as they've been in government, what we've seen is increases in taxes and huge amounts of money being wasted.
Yeah, I mean, they're not reading. They didn't read their own manifesto by the sounds of it. They're certainly not reading the room with how people are feeling at the moment, are they?
I don't know if I totally agree with that. It's a job of governments to lead rather than follow. They've stuck to the manifesto. But look, I think Reem made some fair points. We need some nuance. I actually think...
Can I just stop you there? I mean, they've stuck to the manifesto, including the bit about not interfering with national insurance, which they quite clearly have done.
That's the one where they're feeling most heat, quite understandably. And for anyone who's not followed it, on employers' national insurance is where the change has been made.
But of course, do we know the difference between the impact of tax and the incidence of tax, right? Just because they've said we've increased taxes on employers, that does not mean it's not employees that actually foot the bill. If you are an employer and the cost of employing somebody has gone up dramatically because the government have made it so much more expensive, you are going to A, hire less people, B, ensure that the wage growth is actually a lot slower than it otherwise would have been, and potentially also sack some people. We've seen people lose their jobs as a result of it.
Can I ask some of Reem's points? Otherwise, I'm just sort of a left-wing patsy sitting here.
In the corner.
So, where I do agree with Reem, there's no such thing as a tax rise that doesn't hurt anyone. Someone always picks up the tax for a tax rise, whether that's a Labour government or under a Tory government. I actually think the policies Labour have done are decent ones. They've settled the rail strikes, they've engaged with Ukraine, they've set up GB but I think there is a valid critique over how they've communicated some of these things. So to pick a couple, there was a very difficult inheritance straight after the election, but the mood music from government minister was very downbeat. I don't think that is the sole determinant of what businesses in the city are doing, but it didn't help, and now we've got quite low growth. And then secondly, some of these changes, particularly around the winter fuel allowance, I think that given that you have a deficit of more than £80 billion, changes winter fuel allowance, to me, is defendable and understandable in the circumstances. But there was a bit of a mini announcement and then a gap and then a lot more speculation in Westminster swelled in and a lot of worry built up among pensioners who receive it.
Did you just say it was defensible, what they've done with winter fuel payments?
I think the means testing of it, and when Alan Sugar says Alan Sugar shouldn't be receiving it, I think that makes a case quite cogently.
He tried to notify
give it back.
And that was the case, and he couldn't get through to anyone.
Well, we've all tried ringing up HMRC or whoever it is and sat on the phone for a long time.
I suppose the point is, and I think that this is really important to have these conversations, people that are saying that the winter fuel payments should be going to everyone, I think that don't fully understand how much money that is being used. I mean, I've had stories of very, very wealthy pensioners that are using their winter fuel payments to buy a bottle of whiskey. You know, that's not fair. But then when we're thinking about those that actually can't afford their energy, we have to have these conversations about why it was that this decision was made. And let's be honest, it's a drop in the bucket in comparison to how much other money that we waste. Why would it happen just literally a month, 2 months before winter, when so many pensioners don't know how to ensure they get pension
exactly,
credit?
and the harsh fact is that it has been estimated that 5,000 pensioners could lose their life to cold. Well, lose their lives to cold every year on average, and how many more this year? OK, we're going to leave it for there. Thank you very much for now. I'm Dawn Neeson, this is GB News, and there is loads more coming up on today's show. We'll be looking back at some of the bigger talking points of the week, most of which have been completely mad, and whether the triple lock on pensions is actually under threat by Labour, Conservatives, everyone. All of that and much more to come. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. We'll see you very soon.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
And fashionistas are keen to see which new trends are set to hit the catwalk.
Well, our next guest is very well placed to share her predictions with us after being a contestant on hit ITV series Dress the Nation, as well as being an upcycling and sewing consultant.
Wow. Joining us now is Tendai Murewe. I want to go back to you appearing on the ITV Dress the Nation.
Right.
Tell us about that experience. What was that like?
Oh, that was one of my highlights as an upcycling consultant. I learned to sew in my kitchen 5 years ago. And then, during COVID, just making masks. Then the next thing I was on a Dress the Nation, making dresses in front of TV. Yeah, it was just incredible. I think we all had all these clothes that we have, but we don't know what to do with them. So mainly I started with men's jackets, taking off the sleeves and putting it like a print on.
I've tried this. I've tried taking off my sleeves before. I now have about 3 jackets with no sleeves. I never managed to put them back on.
You need to come to a workshop. You need to come to a workshop.
I need an upcycling consultant. 2025, what can we expect fashion-wise?
I think bold prints are back. people are loving. I think you walk on the streets in frollers and oversized men's
so the
jackets.
Exact opposite. We have drastically underperformed this morning. You're just saying not like us.
We just woke up this morning and thought it's winter, it's cold, it's grey.
Grey, miserable.
Is that not the way to go?
No, it is. It's still, I think because fashion is expressive. It's whatever you want to express yourself. You know?
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back to the weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. Thank you for your company this Saturday afternoon. Now, one of the strangest stories, and there's a lot of competition from yesterday, was Kemi Badenoch saying that the Conservatives might be looking to backtrack on their previous support of the pensions triple lock. The Conservative leader did clarify that her party does support the triple lock, but went on to say, we have to give something back to the next generation. OK. And then Labour naturally jumped on that straight away and said, see, they're going to get rid of the triple lock. And when they were asked on it, they said, well, actually, we can't confirm what we're going to do with it either. Peter, what do you make of this one? We didn't give you much time, so now you can talk a bit more.
Well, Kemi Badenoch may turn out to be a very effective leader of the opposition, but she's making political missteps, and I think this is another one of them. So it's in the news because Keir Starmer's spokesman, Prime Minister's spokesman, said we'd keep the triple lock but didn't rule out means testing. Yeah. So if you're the opposition looking to attack, you can only say either our policy is X or we'll pledge to keep the more generous option to continue to hoover up the pensioner vote, which has been very strong Tory in my lifetime. Kemi Badenoch seems to have done neither. She's been slightly ambiguous when it may have been, but that's created doubt. It may have been better to say nothing. And if you cast your mind back very briefly to the row that Kemi Badenoch she had with Nigel Farage over membership numbers, it seemed to be again picking a battle that she couldn't win because she didn't have the data on Reformers' membership numbers. So we're told she's very competent. Clearly, she's very intelligent, I believe, as well. But she seems to be stumbling into disputes where there's no strategic gain for the Tories over the next few years, and this may be another.
What do you make of what she had to say, Reem? I mean, she's very... I mean, I admire her. She's a young woman. She's done incredibly well. But some of the communications does seem to be a bit lacking occasionally.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think it is about communicating to the public what you actually mean when you say these things. Now, on the surface, this sounds like she wants to absolutely, do something quite terrible to pensioners, and actually that's a core vote.
But she didn't say that at any point.
That isn't what she said. And actually, we spend more than double the entire budget of the Ministry of Defence on pensions alone. The idea, I think we have to communicate to the public and have these conversations properly. The idea that you pay national insurance contributions your whole life, and that's a savings scheme that it's a little pot, and then when you turn 65 you take it out, is just completely not true.
That's not how it works.
Pensions are paid for today by working people today, and we have more people that are in that over 65 category now than we ever have over the last few years, and that does mean that unfortunately a lot of our tax and spend ends up going to pensioners. Now, a quarter of pensioners are millionaires. Is it fair that huge amounts of young people are spending huge amounts of money through their taxes, they're being forcibly taxed by the government, to spend that money on asset-wealthy millionaires? Now, I also recognise that there's the other 75% that are not millionaires, right?
Statistically, yeah.
So that does sort of bode well with the idea that actually maybe means testing it is the right way forward.
OK, it surprised me sometimes with your answers. I mean, yeah, millionaire pensioners, I mean, they might be living in a house that is valued over £1 million, but surviving on the minimum state pension.
Yeah, I mean, again, Reem knows her facts, and I give her great respect for that. But if you're quote-unquote £1 million pensioner, but if you're living anywhere in the south of England or in certain parts of northern Scotland, 600k or more of that might be your property. And if you're a widow or widower, you know, you've got all the sadness of that, you've got a home to heat, your income could be relatively modest. But I actually think, just talking around it, means testing is on the agenda, and it's only going to get more so. And it is kind of for the pensions reasons as well. If the deficit, I keep coming back to it, is more than £80 billion, so we're choosing to spend money on things with money that basically doesn't exist. But then that tab is going to be picked up by future generations. I'm quite happily paying my parents' pension because there's no pot with their name on it. It's current taxpayers. But
your parents have paid in their entire lives to support the previous generation.
Yeah, but then... because I'm a bit of a middle-aged man, Reem will pay my pension because she's younger than me. So it means the costs that are passed on to the next generation become greater and greater because you have a spiralling deficit, and then separately there's this great pot of wealth accumulated in property assets, which is generally only released on sale or death through inheritance tax, which, for quite understandable reasons, again, all the governing parties... so not really the Lib Dems. All the governing parties have been afraid to touch property wealth because pensioners vote in high numbers. They tend to vote Tory, but they also tend to vote for the winning party. And by that, what I mean briefly is they voted blue for a long time, but they shifted red a bit in the recent election. So retaining or gaining the pensioner vote is vital to winning a general election.
Actually, which is interesting. It brings us around to the one party that has said they're not going to touch the triple lock, and it is 100% safe, and that's Reform.
It is Reform, and I think that, to be completely honest, I really do like Reform as a party, but some of their spending measures, and I know not all of it has actually been worked out, it's entirely for the birds. You can't... The triple lock on pensions is unsustainable. The size of the welfare state is unsustainable. We also, by the way, have a tenth of the adult working population on sickness benefits. So we have... What we currently have in the situation is a bloating size of the state. The state is absolutely enormous, and we are taxing people literally to the brink. We're also taxing quite bad elements of the economy, so things like employers' national insurance contributions. That going up means that it's much harder for people to get those jobs in the first place. Young people are just going to leave. Why would I spend my entire life being taxed to the oblivion in order to pay for a system that, to be completely honest, will not exist for me? The triple lock on pensions will not exist by the time I'm a pensioner. So we have to have these honest conversations and say, how can we create a welfare state and a system in which it's actually sustainable in the long run?
What about the money that some people on here would say we waste? The foreign aid budget, for example.
Oh, totally. Get rid of it. I mean, I think that the fact that taxpayer money went to a all-female opera in Shanghai, which is, by the way, wealthier per capita than many areas of the UK, is insane. The IEA actually came out with a paper last year about sort of looking at areas that we spend money. We spend money on foreign aid to places in the world that are wealthier than some places in the UK. It's insane. Let's look after the UK before we start caring about places that are actually wealthier than us.
Peter, final word. Charity begins at home.
I don't believe charity begins at home either, because I believe in fairness, or because as a personally, no, all different, but as a Christian, the idea that we'd take money away from some of the poorest nations in the world, you know, like Sudan or Afghanistan. Yet there's a separate and completely legitimate question about when the Chinese economy is kind of crushing us every day, why we send money to China. But international aid is morally good, but it's also economically good because it boosts other global economies, cuts crime, cuts deprivation, cuts militantism. It is in Britain's interest to have other poor countries become prosperous and stable.
Well, let us know what you think. You've heard what the panellists think. Interesting views there at gbnews.com/your say. Now, I'm Dawn Neeson, this is GB News, and there's loads more coming up on today's show. We're running out of time, including revelations about the love life of Adolf Hitler. But first, let's get those news headlines with Will Hollis.
Thanks, Dawn. At 2:30, your top story. Dozens of people have been hurt when a ski lift collapsed in Spain, according to its regional government. 9 people have been seriously injured at the ski resort in Aragon. Around 80 people remain trapped, hanging in the chairlift at the ski resort, according to state TV channel TVE. The cause of the cable failure remains unknown. 7 people have been arrested here at a pro-Palestine march in London. 4 are for public order offences, 2 for breaching the conditions that have been put in place. Thousands of people are gathering in Whitehall, calling on the government to stop arming Israel. Yesterday, a 61-year-old woman was arrested on suspicion of inciting others to breach public order conditions. 1,000 officers are on duty in the capital monitoring the march. It all comes as Israeli ministers give full approval for a ceasefire and hostage release deal. That's pausing the war in Gaza on Sunday. After a 6-hour meeting, the decision was made to support the deal at the final moments. In a phased release, the first 3 hostages will be freed at 6:30 a.m. British time, followed by 30 more over a 6-week period. Women and children, plus older men, will be the first to be released. British hostage Emily Damari is reported to be amongst the first 33 hostages leaving captivity, according to the Jewish Chronicle. In return, Palestinian detainees will be released and a sharp increase in humanitarian aid will hit the Strip. Donald Trump is to review the Chagos deal when he returns to the White House on Monday. The president-elect's team directly intervened in the British government's deal, demanding the delay, according to the Telegraph newspaper. The US has a permanent military base on the East African island. A £20,000 reward is being offered in the search for the parents of 3 babies abandoned in London over 8 years. The 3 children, the third of which, Elsa, was only an hour old when she was found abandoned in a carrier bag a year ago, are full siblings. Babies Harry and Roman were discovered in similar circumstances in 2017 and 2019. Police say, despite reviewing 450 hours of CCTV and analysing DNA, their parents remain unidentified. Those are your top stories. Tatiana Sanchez will be here in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. It's going to be cloudy, dull and cold in the south, with some brighter spells developing elsewhere and feeling mild in the north. Having a look at the bigger picture then, we have an area of high pressure extending across the south of the UK, squeezing the isobars further towards the north and west, with a weak weather system out towards the west. So a cloudy picture to come across much of southern England and into East Anglia, but where we have a bit more of a breeze, we will see some breaks in the clouds developing, especially across northern parts of Cornwall, Devon, into Wales and northern England. Best of the sunshine though across the far north and east of Scotland. Highs here possibly up to 13 degrees, but cold underneath this persistent cloud further towards the south. As we go through Saturday evening then, clearer skies across north and eastern parts of Scotland, but still quite mild, temperatures coming up at around 7 or 8 degrees. Cloudy across Northern Ireland as well, but clearer skies across northeastern parts of England and Wales. Temperatures quickly falling away here, so we could see a touch of frost for some of us, but still holding on to this blanket of cloud across the southern parts of England. And as we go through Saturday night, we'll start to see some drizzle just pushing up from the English Channel, some of that falling as snow grains. The cloud will continue to push its way northwards, but we'll see some breaks in the cloud, and where we see the lengthiest clear skies, a touch of frost and possibly some fog patches, but a cold night to come with temperatures really struggling. So as we start Sunday morning then, a cloudy, murky picture out there with some drizzle and snow grains across parts of England. A cloudier picture across Wales and northern England as well, with just this frontal system across Northern Ireland just gradually pushing its way in. Otherwise, temperatures a touch down for all of us on Sunday, still feeling cold underneath this cloud.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back to The Weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. Thank you for your company this afternoon. And there's plenty coming up on today's show. But before I tell you what we've got lined up for you, Nana Akua has joined us in the studio, and she always has a cracking show. And it's starting at 3 o'clock. Nana, what you got lined up today?
Well, we are hoping that at some point during the show we will get Nigel live. He's there in Washington, D.C., obviously getting ready for the inauguration of Donald Trump on Monday. So we're going to try and get him live on the show. He's promised me that he will give it his best shot. I can't guarantee it, but I think we will manage to get him. Also, do you think that it's good that Donald Trump has stepped in over the Chagos deal? Are we thankful that he's there? Because, frankly, if someone like Donald Trump and people like Elon Musk and also other commentators like Tucker Carlson don't step in and say things, it looks like our government will literally roller coaster anything that they want to get done because they have such a massive majority. So are you glad that Donald Trump has stepped in over the Chagos deal? And then where is he? Sir Keir Starmer, he's here, he's there. When they said he was in Warsaw, I thought Warsaw in this country. But it turns out it's Warsaw in Poland. So is it time for Keir to come home? And loads more still to come. My monologue I'll go head on with David Lammy and the Chagos deal. And I'd love you to join me. All of that is coming at 3.
That sounds like a really fiery, feisty show coming up with Nana. That starts at 3 o'clock. You don't want to miss it, including Trump and Nigel Farage. You really don't want to miss it. Thank you very much, Nana. Now, this is an interesting one. New revelations have been unveiled about Adolf Hitler's private life after a diary was released documenting his relationship with his long-lost English girlfriend. Unity Mitford's A Long-Lost Journal exposes an obsession with the Nazi dictator, documenting 139 meetings and shocking insights into his private life. Joining me now to discuss this is historian Lord Andrew Roberts. Andrew, if I can call you Andrew, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. This is the front page of the Daily Mail newspaper today, which is a curious choice given everything that's going on in the world. Tell us more about it.
Yes, it's a remarkable scoop by the Daily Mail that they've got hold of the diaries of Unity Mitford, who was one of the Mitford sisters, of course, and who got a sort of massive crush on Adolf Hitler in 1935, went on to meet him 139 times, as you say, and was a fanatical Nazi, a vicious anti-Semite, and a sort of socialite figure as well because of her family background. And they met an awful lot. I don't go along with the idea that she was Adolf Hitler's girlfriend, frankly. There is no evidence to suggest she ever did anything inappropriate with Adolf Hitler, who was, of course, going out with Eva Braun throughout this period. But nonetheless, they are a remarkable set of papers, and it's a pretty impressive scoop that after 80 years, the Daily Mail should be able to publish these diaries.
And how have they come to light suddenly?
I don't know. And apart from the editor of the Daily Mail and 2 other people on the Daily Mail, nobody else knows either. The provenance is a mystery, and I'm keen to find out. It would be lovely to know, but they're keeping that to themselves.
I mean, it does sound like they were very close. And you say that, obviously, he was in a relationship with Eva Braun at the time. But she describes the Fuhrer as heavenly. He is an angel. I mean, that sounds fairly intimate.
It is horrible, the various things that she has to say about about the most evil man in the world, that he's wonderful, he's sweet, he's lovely, and she says this every single time. But she also writes down every time he smiles at her, every time they shake hands more than once. She was a stalker, essentially. She sat in the same restaurant that he had lunch in, day in, day out, until she met him. And he very much liked the idea that she was tall and blonde and Aryan as far as he was concerned. But there's a huge leap between that and being somebody's girlfriend. The fact is, he loved being adored by people, and he was. Not in love with her. He was always in love with himself, and to a much lesser extent, Eva Braun.
So tell us a little bit more about the Mitford sisters. I mean, were they all similar, sort of like, as you say, Nazis?
No, absolutely not. No, this is the fascinating thing about them, really. It's a great sort of nature versus nurture thing. You have Nancy Mitford, the wonderful writer, who was essentially a Tory. Deborah, the Duchess of Devonshire, who also was a Tory to all intents and purposes. Then you have Jessica Mitford, who was a communist, and their sister, they're all sisters, of course, and the other sister, Diana Mitford, who married Sir Oswald Mosley, the leader of the fascist movement in Britain. And then there was a brother called Esmond, who also, called Tom, who also was a fascist, and but then very bravely fought in the Second World War and died in the Second World War. So it's and somebody else called Esmond, who married Jessica, who went and fought in the Spanish Civil War. So all in all, another communist. So you have a great sort of panoply of different political outlooks.
I mean, she was actually quite close to Winston Churchill. She called him Cousin Winston.
No, she wasn't. It's very important to remember that she was a very distant cousin. She writes to him once in order to say that it was a good idea for the Germans to take over Austria. And he writes back a very short telegram to point out that she's completely wrong. That's the only thing. And it wasn't she wasn't his cousin. She was his wife, Clementine's cousin.
Fascinating. Thank you so much for illuminating us more with that one. That's Lord Andrew Roberts on the fascinating front page of the Daily Mail today. Found after 80 years, secret diary of Hitler's English girlfriend, although just friend, maybe, according to Lord Andrew there. Thank you very much. I'm Dawn Neeson. This is GB News, and up next, oh yes, Meghan Markle is battling back against suggestions that she considered a potential divorce with Prince Harry. Is there truth to this report, or are those rumours wide of the mark? This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Don't go too far. We'll see you soon.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
According to a report from the RAC, many drivers see speed limits as a target rather than anything else. More than 50% of us think it's acceptable to break the speed limit.
So this morning we're asking, is it time to increase the motorway speed limit?
Let's talk to automotive journalists Danny Kelly and Steve Fowler. Gents, what a pleasure to speak to you both in one go.
I think we should join many countries in the European Union that have 130 kilometres speed limit, which is around about 81 miles an hour. I drive to London on a weekly basis, and I think the roads are capable of handling higher speeds. I think unofficially the speed limit, without getting pulled over by the local police at the time, is probably around about 78, 80 miles an hour. If a Bobby's on the motorway doing 70 miles an hour, he wants you to overtake him. He wants the free-flowing of that motorway to continue.
So should we change 70 miles an hour? You know, if people are going 80 miles an hour, just stick to 70 miles an hour as a limit. Yes, you know, it's funny when you're driving along the motorway and there's a police car going at 70 and nobody wants to overtake. But if the average is 80, just leave it at 70.
All the gantries now are fitted with the modern signage where they can change the limit at will. We all know that. It's hard to get up to 70 half the time. So, actually, we could apply those rules, couldn't we, at 80 or even 90 miles an hour and say, well, if the weather's bad, let's reduce it. If the fog's bad, let's reduce it.
Yeah, unfortunately, and I hate to use this phrase, smart motorways, but they're the ones where you have the adjustable limits. They don't cover all of the motorway network, relatively small amount of the motorway network. It is a limit. You know, it's not a target, as I keep saying to my kids. God, they're bored of me saying that.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This January, history will be made again.
Join GB News as we bring you full coverage of Donald Trump's presidential inauguration.
From the swearing-in ceremony to the celebrations, we'll be there to capture every moment that shapes the next chapter of world politics.
The best guests, live updates and unparalleled insight as Donald Trump becomes the 47th President of the United States. The inauguration Monday from 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the weekend with me, Dawn Neeson. Thank you so much for your company. The last few minutes of the show, so really, really appreciate your time. Now, rumours of Meghan Markle planning a divorce memoir have been flatly denied by her friends. But speculation grew after a Vanity Fair article. I mean, this is a serious magazine, normally on Meghan's side. Insiders insist there's no truth behind the claims in this Vanity Fair article, which goes on for about 8,000 words, of a post-Harry book deal. Joining me now is royal commentator Jack Stooks to talk about this story. Jack, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.
Now, Vanity Fair is a big supporter of Meghan Markle. It's not like a gossipy tabloid magazine, is it? Some of the things they're claiming are quite astonishing.
They are, but I can't see the truth in it myself personally, because you know we saw the amazing wedding, we saw the speculation coming up to the wedding, we saw everybody saying that this American woman's coming and she wants to be part of the British royal family, and she knew what she was doing, she knew she was coming into this family, and everybody was speaking about how she was going to take over, and we've now had all these press articles saying that she's controlling Harry, and so be it. So why would she be doing all of those things and at the same time thinking, oh, actually, I'm going to divorce him and write a book? It doesn't make sense. Personally, to me, it just makes no sense at all. I mean, she's better off, I suppose, making money with him than against him. And if they do get divorced, I'm sure, you know, there would be books written after in the aftermath. No doubt. But at the moment, we've got the new Netflix documentary that's about to come out of her cooking program that she's delayed because of the fires. And she's been seen with Prince Harry at the fires. I know that's caused a bit of furor in the Hollywood circles. People saying that they're sort of tourists going in, sort of trying to be seen. I think that's a little bit unkind of what they are, the press that they're receiving for that, because Prince Harry has been brought up in the British family. He's very used to going to affected areas with his family, with his mother and father, to help. And I think, you know, that's still within him. He's a hard-working person. He always has been. So to see them go to that area and see what they can do to help, I do think that it's come from the heart with Harry, like it would have his mother. You know, when we saw Princess Diana at the landmines, for instance. And he still has that about him. And unfortunately, the press that sort of rile up the story, and then we had, I think it was Kelly Osbourne who went online and started ranting about them both, rather than just going, well, you know what, let them get on with it and do what their thing, and I'll do mine.
Jack, this is indeed an 8,000-word cover feature on Vanity Fair, and it describes Prince Harry as, or portrayed Prince Harry as being naive, lonely figure who's failed to make any real friends. while the Duchess is portrayed as a ruthless boss who treats those who fail to impress with contempt. She was accused, indeed, of bullying back in 2018, wasn't she, at the palace?
Yes, I think she said that she was being bullied, and then I think counterclaims came out about it. She said it was more to do with racism, and I think we're all fully aware of racism. We're all fully aware that it goes on in every sort of part of the world. We can't get away from racism like we can't get away from bullying. It happens in every establishment.
Do you think the reaction is racism against Meghan?
The reaction now, I don't think so. No, not at all. I'm not saying that there wasn't racism, because I'd be lying to say that racism doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm. OK, interesting. Thank you very much. That's Jack Stooks on the Vanity Fair. Our story about Harry and Meghan, potential divorce. What do we make of this one, Peter? I know you're a big fan of both of them. Go on.
I'd never talk about someone's marriage because I've no knowledge, and I think that'd be really unfair and intrusive. But I have got a lot of sympathy for them. And I know you might have been jesting about being a big fan, but, you know, Prince Harry's a war hero. They've both suffered a lot of media intrusion. I read Prince Harry's book, Spare. He's clearly quite a troubled guy. And, of course, he and Prince William had the exceptional, unbelievable tragedy of losing their mother at a young age. Yes, the Sussexes have made one or two mistakes, but so have I.
Well, unfortunately, Reem, we haven't got any time for you. Thank you very much, Reem Ibrahim, and Peter, thank you very much for joining me, and thank you for watching. Really appreciate your time. I'm back tomorrow lunchtime, but don't go anywhere because Nana is here at 3 o'clock with her show. But first, it's the weather.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. A cold and cloudy picture in the south. We will see some brighter spells through today, but milder in the north. Having a look at the bigger picture then, we have this area of higher pressure extending across the south of the UK. Bit more of a breeze further towards the north and west, with a weather front just lingering out towards the west. So through the rest of the afternoon and evening time, we hold on to this blanket of clouds, so murky conditions across much of England and Wales. That cloud will continue to push its way further towards the north. We may see some breaks, and when we see any lengthy clear skies, that's where we'll see a touch of frost developing and perhaps some fog patches. Clearer skies, though, across north and eastern parts of Scotland, and here the winds will gradually ease as we go through this evening and overnight. So to start Sunday morning then, a bright but cold start across northern parts of Scotland. A bit more cloud further towards the south, but still cold here. Mild across Northern Ireland to start the day, 7 or 8 degrees. But where we see any clear skies to start, we may see a touch of frost in places. But otherwise, across the bulk of England and Wales, a cloudy picture to Sunday morning with some drizzle and even some snow grains from the English Channel just pushing their way further towards the north. So through Sunday, most of us seeing a cloudier picture compared to Saturday. Best of the sunshine across north and eastern Scotland, with this weather front just slowly trying to edge its way eastwards. But for all of us, it is going to be a cold day, especially under this persistent cloud. Temperatures struggling here at only around 2 or 3 degrees. And as we go through Sunday evening, this weather system further towards the west will continue to push its way eastwards, so some rain and drizzle at times across Northern Ireland and the Western Isles. And then into next week, while spot the difference, a lot of cloud, patchy rain and drizzle at times, highs of up to 8 degrees. Bye-bye.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
There's just 2 weeks left to grab your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. £50,000 in tax-free cash. How would you react if you won?
Oh my God.
That's a big surprise.
Amazing. Just the best feeling ever.
I'm in shock. That is absolutely fantastic.
Thank you.
for another chance to win. Text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to GB News. We are live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akwe. Over the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, political commentator Susie Stride, and also broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy. Coming up in my niggle, I'll be taking David Lammy head on as his Chagos deal crumbled before his very eyes. His pact could be scuppered by US President-elect Donald Trump, the very man our Foreign Secretary tactfully called a neo-Nazi sympathising sociopath. So, was Ashfield MP Lee Anderson right after all?
We've got over 6,000 villages in the United Kingdom. And if you took the village idiot from every village, right, and put them 6,000 village idiots into Tottenham, David Lammy would still be the village idiot.
Or is that a bit harsh? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, are you glad Donald Trump is stepping in over Chagos? To vote, go to gbnews.com. That's our website. I'll also be asking, is it time for Sir Keir Starmer to come home? Rather than facing the farmers, the pensioners, the grooming gang survivors head on, he always seems to be somewhere else. And then for the interview, I'll be joined by Christopher Bride, a double amputee who survived being bombed in Afghanistan. He'll be competing in this year's Invictus Games. It's set to be an inspiring interview you won't want to miss. But before we get started, let's get your latest news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Anna, thank you very much. The top stories. At least 30 people have been seriously injured when a ski lift collapsed in Spain, according to its regional government. 9 people have been seriously hurt at the ski resort in Aragon. Around 80 people remain trapped, hanging in the chairlift at the ski resort, according to the state TV channel TVE. Now, the cause of the cable failure remains unknown. The Israeli military says it's preparing to receive hostages after their release from Hamas captivity ahead of the ceasefire taking effect. Israeli ministers gave a full approval yesterday. After a 6-hour meeting, the decision was made to support the deal at the final moments. In a phased release, the first 3 hostages will be freed tomorrow, followed by 30 more over a 6-week period. Women and children, plus older men, will be first to be released. British hostage Emily Damari is reported to be amongst the first 33 hostages leaving captivity, according to the Jewish Chronicle, but there's yet to be official confirmation on that. In return, Palestinian detainees will be released and a sharp increase in humanitarian aid. Back here in the UK,